point.
Yes.
From Mike Sorg.
Right.
Hey, everyone. It's John and Rachael from YaJagoff. And we're used to seeing everybody here on Wednesday nights when we were doing the lives. Had a wonderful time. And obviously that platform worked for us. And here we are again, this time a very much more serious tone, even though, of course, anything dealing with the pandemic has been serious. But it was very important to us that we have some affiliation with our friends, our peers, people we've worked with in the industry. As we said, Pittsburgh notables who we've had the honor of knowing in some way or interviewing in some capacity. And talking about the questions that are very awkward to ask, very awkward to discuss, and do them in a manner that is in a panel discussion among people who are we're all facing it. We're all facing it in some way, whether we're on the receiving end or we are just not educated enough to understand how to deal with it. And so to John and I, it was very, very important that we listen. And sometimes, even coming from communication backgrounds, that's the biggest fault of all.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And we thought there's so many tough conversations going on about the racial inequalities and things that are happening. And we needed to get in the middle of that, not because we wanted to be famous or not because we wanted to get a lot of views. The fact is that we are known for sort of kidding around on our podcast. Yeah, but we wanted you to know that we take our position in the Pittsburgh media realm pretty seriously. And so that's why we decided we took us some time to figure out what we should do here, because we did not want to knee jerk and just suddenly say, well, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to post this or post that. We decided to sit down with her and say, can we have a discussion amongst friends that might be a difficult discussion, but still a discussion amongst friends, and use that as an example on how all of you might be able to sit and have discussions where you said, Rachael, listening is the lost art at this point.
And to take it a step further, for our white friends, for our white viewers, for our white listeners, it is so important that you understand this is not just asking the questions that you think you're supposed to ask. These are questions that, we could tell you we all spoke prior to and had really raw conversation and shared really great experiences. So again, it was important to us as two white media outlet people, however we want to describe ourselves, I don't know, to have the conversation with people who we truly in our hearts say are our friends. So here we are.
And so before we go any further, we have to thank, because we didn't throw this together, right? We didn't go through this together just by ourselves. We have to thank, first of all, the Pittsburgh Black Media Federation, of which one of our panelists is the vice president of. Point Park University Center for Media Innovation, and Andrew Conte there is just been a friend of the podcast for some time. The Ambridge Connection, of which Felicia, one of our panelists, is part of. The Pittsburgh Media Partnership, which YaJagoff Media is a part of, to determine if the media if the Pittsburgh area can be more welcoming to everybody. And we never do anything technical correctly unless we have Sorgatron Media and Mike Sorg involved. So he's the one that's making sure you see and hear this. And he just sent me a text. I don't know if you saw it. He said, you're a little soft. So he wants you
I'm never soft.
So right. So Rachael's never been accused of that.
I'm about to start yelling.
So we have some panelists tonight, and we have 7 of those. One of those is not quite in the house yet, which we'll explain. But we have 11 questions that we've all compiled. This panel that you see on your screen got together and compiled some questions and said, we know we're not going to solve every problem tonight, but these 11 questions are the ones that we want to first start the conversation.
Yeah, off the top of our heads. So the 11 questions were compiled by these people who you will see tonight. We certainly want to get to a town hall component, as we explained prior, as we did the promo. It's very important to us, as well as our panelists, that the discussion goes in that manner so that it doesn't just stop the conversation with the questions in which we developed. But please understand that these questions that we have are so important. So if we get to the town hall a little late, understand that we first of all expect your questions to be appropriate. And sticking to the subject and understanding the value of the people's time. So. In
the meantime, the 11 questions that we assembled, all of the panelists who are volunteering their time tonight assembled those. So we want to make sure we get through those and still give time for the town hall. The town hall, again, you write on whatever place you're watching this, the YaJagoff page or the CMI page, and Mike Sorg will be able to see your comments and your questions and filter those to us. Not filter in a way that we pick a certain one, but he will get those to us, and then we will
Well, and I
decide
think
which
it's important to say, and you guys can chime in. This is completely off the cuff. If any of your watch parties or where you're sharing has a question that you feel is legitimate, send it to us so that we can obviously address that as well, just in case there's not a very important.
And you have to do that through the YaJagoff Facebook
through
page
the
or the
YaJagoff
CMI Facebook page. So shall we?
That was a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot. So as we said, we have friends and panelists, business associates, people that we thought, these aren't people that we gathered together to say they'll help us reinforce what we think. These are people that we knew that we could have a great discussion with. So first, Sarah Aziz right there. I don't know where she's on the middle of my screen, but Sarah is the director of the Dollar Bank Three Rivers Arts Festival, otherwise known as TRAF, and the Highmark First Night Pittsburgh at the Pittsburgh Cultural Trust. Sarah has been on the podcast a number of times, and we've interviewed her, and she's so culturally involved because of the Cultural Trust. But again, we're asking her to come on as a woman of color, a woman of a non-white woman, seemed to be the appropriate for the panel.
And she knows a lot about culture.
She certainly does.
And she knows not to make it rain.
Yes. Right.
And next is Felicia Mycyk. And Felicia, we had the honor of meeting at the PMP through Point Park. And she is the creator of the Decide Self-Leadership Workshops. She is the head track and field coach and assistant football. Yes, I said football coach for Ambridge Area High School. She's an empowerment speaker. And she is the founder and publisher of the Ambridge Connection. It goes on and on and on. So I'll stop there.
And we know her through our Pittsburgh Media Partnership connection. And up in my left-hand corner with the awesome hat is our friend Frzy. Frizzy's been on our podcast. And by the way, just to throw this out there, the podcast where we did a long version of our podcast with Frizzy is up for a Golden Quill Award, 2 Golden Quill Awards, as a matter of fact. We're finalists for that. So,
but no, Frizzy to him because of why.
Right, exactly. So Frizzy is Emmy Award winning. You can watch his Mr. Rogers retake of the Mr. Rogers song in his red sweater. It's very awesome on YouTube. 2020 Grammy Class Recording Academy member. And we were there when he broke the Guinness World Book of Record for freestyle rapping. So welcome to the panel, Frizzy.
And next, and it looks like if we were looking at Hollywood Squares, Andy Conte is to the right of Frizzy, and he is the director of the Center for Media Innovation and the author. This is super important that we need to note because I think this is the first time I'm realizing. I know we've talked about you being an author, but I don't think I realized. He is the author of The Color of Sundays, which is a book about professional sports and civil rights. How about that? Boom.
And he's not the only author on the panel, of course, because there's Mr. Jim Rooney, who, you know the name in the Pittsburgh area, but he authored A Different Way to Win, the Dan Rooney story, a story about his father, and the story about how the Rooney Rule came into place in the NFL. So he's here. And the crazy thing about Mr. Rooney is we literally attacked him at a St. Patrick's Day parade at the front of it. We said, can you interview us with our podcast? And he took our phone numbers down. Mr. Jim Rooney, who, you know the name in the Pittsburgh area.
So
but
next is Olga George, and we're sort of finalizing with her, but we do have one other panelist. Olga is such a dear friend, and she just truly epitomizes fairness, in my opinion. She is an Emmy-nominated documentary producer. She is a co-director of the Frank Bolden Multimedia Workshop, the vice president, important to say because this is one of our partners, the Pittsburgh Black Media Federation, and she is a journalist and a dear friend. And last but not least,
he is coming, Arthur Moats. Oddly enough, that he ended up with a last-minute conflict and a good one as well. But Arthur Moats, as you know, 9-year NFL veteran, retired Pittsburgh Steeler, author of his own book, The Moats Theory on Life, which is good for all ages, as a matter of fact, and currently a media broadcaster and appears regularly on the YaJagoff podcast as Moats' Notes. He will be coming here. So, first of all, thank you, all of our panelists. We appreciate you guys taking the time.
Hopefully we didn't butcher names or any titles, but yes, thank you. Let's get on with it, right?
Sure.
Question number 1. So, since Arthur is going to be slightly delayed, Mike Sorg, we won't do an awkward point. If you could cue Arthur's video. Arthur will literally be here within, we're not going to say ish time, because if he's on YaJagoff time, it's going to be a little later than we thought. So we'll give him his time. He's a man of his word, but he did pre-record the first question because the very first question, every one of the panelists is going to answer. They were aware of it. ahead of time. And to keep things on track and on a tight time frame, they will have 2 minutes to answer the first question. It's the most general question, but pretty much asked by or presented by every panelist. So without further ado,
the question is,
let's hear Arthur.
Why talk about race?
Why talk about race?
Arthur Moats here, and I'll be joining the call shortly. But I feel like this is something important, man, in terms of this conversation, in terms of this panel. I feel like this conversation needs to be had. It's been long overdue. And we talk about race in general. Why talk about that? I think of myself as a minority. I think of my children. I think of my family. And this is a conversation that has been avoided from a national standpoint for far too long. And I think now we finally got the opportunity. We finally have the attention of the world, so that way we can really have this conversation and people will take heed to everybody's perspective of it, everybody's thoughts and things along that nature. But ultimately, man, we'll be able to have a lot of growth come from this. So I'm extremely excited to have this conversation, and I'm glad that it is finally taking place because it has been long overdue.
Yes, and Arthur, you will see when he comes on, just an awesome guy to have on the panel. Frzy, why talk about race?
Oh man, well, thank you for asking. I think Arthur said it great. You know, for me, it's kind of unfortunate that we have to have the conversation, right? But it's because it keeps coming up in conversation. I think that since it's a subject of everyone's interest, good or bad, I think that we should find a way to speak about it so that people can understand exactly why it is what it is, right? Why race exists. Since that's something we need to tell everyone. And that everyone needs to make sure that they understand that we are created equal, right? And that we don't choose the color of our skin, yet we have to explain why it is the color it is. So I'm excited to explain why it is the color it is.
That's a good answer. Let's just go again in our order. We'll go to Andy because on our screen, you're next.
Well, so first, kudos to John and Rachael for hosting tonight's conversation and getting it going, because it really was you two. And for a long time, I think a lot of white people have been asking this question: why talk about race? And coming to the conclusion, well, it's too risky, and the rewards aren't great enough. And that's been on for far too long. And finally, white people are starting to come to the realization, if we don't talk about race, that we're never going to get a handle on it. We've acted like racism is a black problem. We put it on black people to solve the problem of racism, and it's really a white problem. And so, as a white guy, I'm glad to be here on the panel tonight and, being part of this discussion. It's important that white people finally start talking about race and racism and realizing that we need to do a better job, and that this is something that we really need to work at and we need to fix. So thanks for having the conversation.
Thank you.
Felicia from the Ambridge Connection, tell us why talk about race.
Well, I don't have to talk about anything if I go off of Andrew. It's a y'all problem. But no, seriously, on my opinion on this, I think we have to talk about race because America has talked about race from the beginning. One of the things I looked at was the census, and we're in that time now that we have to do the census, right? If you look at the very first census in 1790, they were already talking about race then. It was 100% white, or 100% white, free white, or slave. And then every year they added something new to the census. Then they started adding black, and then they started adding Asian, and then they changed black to Negro. So, I mean, it's been America's conversation for years. So that's why I believe we need to talk about race. But if I don't mind sitting down and letting Andrew just take this whole thing, because it seems like he knows what we need to do.
Well, Sarah, do you want to pass off to Andrew, or would you like to answer why talk about race?
No, I'll answer it. Although, gosh, I don't really want to follow Coach because jeepers, she's going back to 1790 and is clearly more well-read and researched than I am. But I remember growing up and thinking it was so weird when everyone was like, I don't see color. I don't, and you were like, but I do. And my background is my dad is from Pakistan and my mom is white and she's from Ambridge, actually. But, I was obviously a different color than most of my friends who were either black or white. And, but we couldn't talk about it. It was super weird. Right. So I'm glad that we're not beating around the bush anymore. You know, like everyone sees race, everyone has some privileges that come along with that race, and let's be open about it. Let's just own it. It's America's problem, as you said, and you know, let's just figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Good point. It looks like next up is Jim Rooney on our monitor. So, Mr. Rooney, if you could unmute yourself. Same question, please. Why is it important to talk about race?
Yeah, and I think it's, you know, similar to what has been said. I think that we are in a moment right now, and it's a moment because we watched George Floyd be murdered in front of all of us on screens, that the conversation is different right now, or at least I hope for many people, and as Andrew said, white people, it is different. And you know, so many of us talked about listening and getting more information, and you know, what I heard more as I reached out over the last several weeks is, you know, people giving more detail of their stories. You know, obviously the pain and the outrage of watching, you know, those eight plus minutes, you know, the humiliation of knowing that you're better than someone else who is going to get an opportunity that you're not going to get, you know, to just every day, I guess these aren't simple things, but walking in a room and everyone looking at you. And, you know, if we're going to say we're good people in a community, and as Andrew said, we're going to be, you know, white people in positions of influence, and, you know, we like to claim that we're good people, you know, we have to look not just at sort of this generic conversation about race, but very specific details of what, you know, our friends, our neighbors, other people in our community are experiencing. And I hope that will, you know, be somewhat of a driver to help us move forward in this conversation.
Good point.
And Olga, how are you?
Oh, Miss Olga.
Go ahead and unmute.
Unmuted.
There you go. There you go. There you go. Oh, there you go. There you go.
Finally.
Yeah. You're like my dad. You just keep clicking the
there we
button.
go.
Right. Yeah. So Olga, why talk about race?
I keep clicking. I'm being impatient. You know, we've been talking about race in America for centuries, as was pointed out earlier by Coach. The difference is the conversation has really taken place in the African American community, the Black community. It is taking place in the white community, but it's not listened. It's shunned. So every century, that's why you have the civil rights, you have all the different movements, the Reconstruction. All the time you have this discussion about race, but no one really wants to touch it or do anything about it until something drastic happens. So I'm hoping that George Floyd's murder spring forth a true conversation about race, a true listening opportunity, and a true moving forward with the talk about race, because race is so uncomfortable. Talking about race is so uncomfortable for the nation as a whole, because to talk about race means to admit to mistakes and problems in the past and dealing with them in the future, in the here and now. And right now, I don't know how to feel about that. I'm slightly cynical, but optimistic at the same time, that the conversations that we're having now is going to bring forth something good.
I love hearing that. I'm an optimist as well. Seriously. Okay, so second question. And by the way, I think everyone did an amazing job, obviously. And I think everybody's on the same page, right? I think it's so important to, as obviously whoever was the first to bring up the incident that essentially sparked, again, like you guys said, this has been going on, but this conversation in its, you know, raw form now. A lot of white people were saying, I don't understand. I'm just going to freely say this. A lot of white people said, I don't understand why we are being held accountable, in the sense that no normal person or sound mind person thinks that what that officer did was right. Right? I think we could all, in my opinion, we could agree to that. But what does saying something like that, how does that strike with anybody? And this is completely off the cuff, but I think it's important to say that was one of the first questions, because we brought up the incident that sort of sparked it. Frzy, if you want to even let us know what, because I know you dealt with this. I know you saw it on your Facebook page. That was one of the questions that people asked you. He wasn't a normal man to do something like that.
Right. Well, I think that what they were doing was they were trying to justify murder, right? Like they were trying to like justify a mistake, in which, even if we go into detail, was right the thoughts of a counterfeit 20, which it wasn't even a counterfeit 20 at all. So the fact that he lost his life and people found a way to try to justify that in the middle of the street, right, when you have a grown man begging for his mother. But I think what's unfortunate is that, like, Rachael, you say that, like, yeah, we all saw it and we understood it was a problem, but we didn't, right? Because right after that, a week later, there was a George Floyd challenge. When there were kids on TikTok and Instagram kneeling on their friends' necks to see who get the most views, right? I think that no one wants to accept that or take the responsibility for that, because, like you said, it's based on mistakes. So no one wants to kind of take that responsibility. The reason why it's obvious that that doesn't happen is because, like Will Smith said, right, this is not new. It's just getting recorded. Right. Finally. Right. Exactly. So now we're all finally seeing it, and now you have to talk about it. Like, you can't, like, right now we're in a closet with the elephant in the room. We used to be in an arena with the elephant in the room. Right. So now a lot of white people are getting uncomfortable. They can't move how they used to move. And now you're actually having to start answering questions to a lot of your friends. One of the things that was happening on my page was a lot of people were saying that, but I was realizing that a lot of these people who say that that he deserved it or he shouldn't have resisted and all this stuff like that also don't have a lot of black friends. They haven't had that conversation with them, right? They don't know what that feels like. They're removed from it. They're the people that turn the channel, or, you know, when you get to Instagram, it says graphic thing, please click here, and they scroll past, right? So that's the thing that hurts. I think we have to have this conversation now. You have to accept it, and you have to understand that you are, especially white people in America, you are responsible, not because you did it yourself. No, you didn't, but you didn't fix what they did. You didn't fix what your ancestors did. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the problem.
And Andrew or Sarah, do you guys do you want to comment on that as well? You know, Rachel's question as far as, you know,
I just thought it was important to ask that, you know, because we brought up.
Andrew, anyone? I thought you had something. I thought you were looking to say something, Andrew. No.
I mean, it goes back to, you know, what Frzy was saying, that it is difficult for white people to talk about racism. You know, we think about racism in the United States as, like, you know, the KKK and white supremacists, and, you know, we put it in that category, and we look at it as white people and we say, well, I'm not that. I don't wear a white hood. I'm not a racist. But I think what we're able to start to articulate better is that there are lots of ways of being racist, and, you know, there are lots of subtle racism, and that it's not, you know, obviously something we have to work on to get over racism, but it's okay to say, you know, I am racist. I've got things that I see people differently because of their skin color, and I need to work on that. I need to have more black friends. I need to be in situations where I'm around black people so that I feel more comfortable with it. It's okay for white people to start to have those conversations. And you know, for so long we've been afraid to talk about that, and even to ourselves. And you know, and to consider, how do we talk when we're only around white people? You know, and is it different than when we're talking in a group of mixed race people? And so there are a lot of things that we need to address, but, you know, I mean, at least we're having the conversation. And the other thing that I think is interesting, that, you know, as a white person, I've seen people since George Floyd's murder starting for the first time to get serious about this conversation and to engage with it. You know, we went to Upper St. Clair and there were like 500 white people rallying for Black Lives Matter. And it's like, that's not something that would have happened before. And so I understand Olga's cynicism. I understand why black people are looking and saying, you know, this is just a white moment and it's going to pass. As a white person, I hope that it's not. And, you know, it's up to all of us to take it on and to carry it forward and to say, like, this is a moment we're going to do something different. And we're going to, you know, we're going to finally address the issue.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to say, Andrew, though, when I think about what's happening now, I look back to what happened during the civil rights movement. And there were whites out that we consider our allies who, you know, got a lot of things moving forward, and everybody was singing Kumbaya. This is the end of race. No one's going to be, you know, seeing race, you know, Martin Luther King. we've reached the promised land. And really, what happened was racism went subtly. It went subtle. It went into the courthouses. It went into the police stations. It went into our classrooms. And white people thought, okay, you said, Andrew, people, don't want to be seen as racist. And that's the main thing. For a white person to say, I have racist thoughts. Oh my God, that's a horrible label. I don't want to be labeled a racist. So I'm going to pretend that everything is okay. I don't have those thoughts. And actually, when you start talking to me, how you treat me shows that you think I'm inferior, but that is that facing of who you are, your community, that tells you that you are better than another race. So you can feel good about yourself, because the idea that no matter how bad it is for a white person, no matter how poor you are, you're better than a black person. Therefore, hey, life is good.
Right.
But dealing with that conversation, dealing with the idea that I have those racist thoughts, that label, that understanding is why we have so many problems about talking about race, first of all, and second of all, dealing with what comes out of the racist behavior and the racist attitudes that this society still has.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are will talk about how bad the ghettos are, but have never been in one, right?
Yeah.
Like you have a lot of people, unfortunately, that would rather walk barefoot than to walk in someone else's shoes.
Mm-hmm. And Mr. Rooney, we have another question we want to get to, but I want to make sure you have a chance to, because sort of what Olga and Frzy are talking about here is something that helped your family, your father, recognize this early on. And we can get to that specific question later, but do you have any thoughts on what Olga and Frzy are saying right now?
Well, I think it's where we're at. I think what they're saying is, so essential, I guess. Where I look at how another piece we have to deal with it is, so there's the term racism, and I think we have to say we're not just going to be allies, we're going to be anti-racist. And I think what that's going to require is, looking at how we manage power and influence. And, are we willing to share? Are we willing to raise up other voices and do it in a way that isn't pejorative, isn't this white savior point of view? And frankly, it's tricky. No one wants to give up their power. But I think, good people can understand that we can all share power. And that bleeds into race. I think it also gets into economics and status in the United States that has race incorporated in it, but also goes beyond. I can only speak to the experiences I know and then I've seen, but where my father did well, and we can talk about his limitations, but he did a good job of I think, genuinely being interested in sharing that power and influence. And then when he knew other people wouldn't have the same positional power he had, trying to be, have a high degree of accountability of then trying to raise those voices so that you could get to the point where you're sharing.
Thank you. So let's go ahead. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Felicia. Did you want to say?
Well, I was just going to point out, I agree completely with Mr. Rooney about the power and influence, because you hear so many. I grew up with people coming into my neighborhoods, bringing us food, bringing us book bags, and taking us off to church, and always trying to be saviors. And I think when you think of power and influence, that's what the people, they don't think to do. You have to empower people. So if you're sitting there just trying to say, hey, I want to be your savior, and then they can go back and post a picture on Instagram or IG or Snapchat, whatever, just to say, oh, I helped these people, I'm now their ally because I've helped do this. That's not what I'm looking for. And I think that's what we need. And just to touch base on what Fritz said earlier, he quoted Will Smith, I want to say you said it was.
Yeah.
It's being filmed. So back with OGCooking up there, that's what their name's coming up as, OGCooking. I think that's the difference from back then to now. Back then, it wasn't being filmed. Now everybody has a camera. Everybody can film it. So I think this is changing. And the word racist, I mean, I I hate going around anywhere and I hear the word racist because immediately it shuts down every white person in the room. So I have to watch how I speak in those rooms, because if I even mention racism, oh, she's a Black girl, of course she's going to mention race. She's a Black one, and I'm the only Black one at most of the tables I'm sitting at. So now, like Andrew was saying, and by all means, Andrew, I was picking on you earlier, but I think you were right on point. What you were saying is exactly what needs to happen. The white people have to say, I'm okay with saying the word racism. I'm okay with saying racist. I'm okay with saying I have some power or influence. That's what we need right now, is that implicit Black bias that people are not owning. So they might not be full out KKK racist, but they might have those implicit biases that they're bringing to the table.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. All right, so let's. We're getting a text.
Can I jump in with one more?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I ask everyone to call me Jim because I think calling me Mr. Rooney is.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, sorry.
We're all buying into the system by doing that. And
they started it. Rachael started it.
Absolutely.
No, I don't.
I didn't say anything at first. That was part of That's part of the problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, let me say that I think everybody is older than me, so I go with Mr. and Mrs.
Frzy, is that right? Is that right?
I'm just kidding.
Listen. I might be wiser. I'll take that.
You are younger. You're right. I'm totally kidding.
So we're hearing from Arthur, and I think he's going to be signing on soon. But let's move on to question number 2. And this is where, for those who are watching, we've sort of not orchestrated, but we've tried to at least get so that everybody gets a chance to speak. But so the second question is social injustice a fixable issue? And, we sit here and think, like, if people would just listen to each other, so many things would get fixed if people would just listen versus overreacting over the first word they hear. But
or waiting to speak their piece.
Right. Not hearing you, just I'm hearing you, but waiting to say what I want to say versus that. So, Sarah, can we talk to you about that? Is social injustice a fixable issue?
I am going to be in camp Olga and Rachael of being cynically optimistic and say yes. yes, it is. But I'm going to frame that and say it's going to be wicked hard. I spent some time in New England, so wicked comes out sometimes. And this is one of those times because for real, white people are going to have to relinquish some of their power. They are going to, it's not just going to be, oh yes, let's achieve equality and equity, and there's going to have to be more room made, and that is going to mean that some people are going to have to change, and change is hard and scary. But I think we are in a moment right now. We are in a moment in time where it can happen, and I think we have to keep talking about it. We have to talk honestly about it. We have to listen, as you guys have all been saying. And, we put up a Black Lives Matter sign in our front yard here. Our community ordered a bunch, and there's a bunch on our street. And my husband was kind of huffy about it. And I was like, why are you being huffy about the Black Lives Matter sign? He was like, how many did you order? And I said, I just got one. And he said, well, how long do you think that's going to last? That's not going to make it through the winter. This isn't a political sign. We don't get to take this down at the election. This sign is going to be up for the rest of our lives. And I was like, oh, dang, white husband, you are correct. I will order a stockpile of signs. But so, yes, I think just having those little conversations, the conversations that we're all having, being the only person of color at a table and being cognizant. Hi, Arthur. Yeah, so I was just saying, yes, I think social injustice is fixable, but it's going to be difficult. So we're only on question 2. You didn't miss much.
Good.
Hey,
Look at that.
Arthur.
That's awesome.
Look at that smile.
Good.
I love that guy. All right, Felicia, would you like to add anything?
Well, I completely agree with Sarah and OG up there. I I believe that I'm optimistic in all this, because this is the first time in my life I've seen all types of people in my neighborhood yelling Black Lives Matter. I've never seen that before in my life. I'm now people throughout my past 10 years, I'll just say the past 10 years, are calling me, telling me I'm sorry, or just seeing if I need help. And it's kind of shocking because I don't know why they're calling me, but they're people that, well, I know why they're calling me. I know what they did. It may not say what they did.
Yeah,
But I think right now people are realizing that, you know what, it's an issue that we need to talk about. And I hate putting it only about race. It's just one of those things they're really looking at it like, hey, I'm looking at my practices. Like, am I not hiring right? Am I not listening right? Is this guy next to me making a policy just to block one or two other people? You know, so I think right now it comes back to we're listening better now. We're more aware.
Yeah, and that's the part we hope, because I'm not necessarily sure, and I don't have an opinion, but that people are listening better now. They're listening to their side, and I just wish people would listen more. So welcome to the panel discussion, Arthur Moats, looking very, very dapper tonight. We appreciate you signing on there. We played your video earlier, so we're right now talking about just in general, is this issue of race inequality, is it fixable? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so honestly, I do think it is fixable, but I think it is something that's going to take a lot of time. I don't think it's an overnight thing. As much as we would want it to be, as much as, especially in today's generation, everything is about the quick fix, right? We want it to get done right now. We protest, we want instant results. But I think because racism and social injustice has been happening for so long, it's going to take time. But I look at it this way, everything will happen in stages. So we had the first stage in terms of getting everyone's attention. That was the protesting. That was the outcry. That was I'm essentially grabbing you by your shirt and telling you, look at me. Now we go to the next phase where we're trying different things from a voting standpoint, trying different things from a policy standpoint, trying different things in terms of whether defunding the police is the right thing to do or not. That's the next thing that we're trying to do, though, trying to see, okay, how do we build upon this stage? And ultimately, I think that we will be able to accomplish it, but it's going to take some time.
Thank you.
That's a great
all right.
We kind of made you jump right on. So
right. We knew you've been training all week for this.
Yeah.
We knew you were jump right.
Okay, so next question. Lack of diversity in Pittsburgh media, both in terms of, and again, just to remind anybody who's just logging on now, these are the questions in which the panelists did compile. So there is an observant amount of a lack of diversity in Pittsburgh media, both in terms of newsrooms and in the media coverage. And Andrew, we're throwing it to you, obviously, to start. And Olga also, if anybody else wants to jump in, feel free.
Okay, so I mean, it's not really a surprise to anyone, right? We've seen report after report. There've been, so many stories done about this lack of diversity in newsrooms and lack of diversity in the coverage of news outlets, all across the country, but especially here in Pittsburgh too. It's been an issue. And I think back to what Felicia said earlier about empowering people, though. And to me, that's what's been missing. It's easy to go to to be a white editor, a white publisher, a white newsroom manager, and go to a meeting and say, yeah, we should do better. We should hire more Black journalists. It's harder. It takes more time to go back to your newsroom and say, I'm going to make sure that there's a pathway for the Black journalists in my newsroom to advance in their careers and to make sure that their voices are heard. Columbia Journalism Review came out with a report last fall that was done by Latrell Crittenden, who was a professor at Robert Morris here in Pittsburgh, and now he's at Thomas Jefferson in Philadelphia. And in the report, they went through and he talked to so many Black journalists who had, who are working in Pittsburgh or who had worked in Pittsburgh. And the comments were, that they're disturbing. They're the kinds of thing you look back and they say, Black journalists, and I know Olga's going to talk about this in a moment, and she can add her own voice to it, and I look forward to hearing what she has to say to it. But the voices in the report were I sit in my newsroom and people don't value what I'm saying, or they don't listen to what I'm saying, or I don't feel like there's a way for me to advance in my career. And so, we can't just have another report. We can't just go to another meeting. It's time for white journalists and white people in media to finally step up and say, we're going to do better to make sure that there are pathways for Black people to come into journalism, like the Frank Bolden workshop, and we're going to support that and be part of it. Which is a summer high school journalism workshop, and then we're going to also find pathways for Black people to advance in their careers once they come into the newsroom.
Olga?
Ooh-wee. I think I need some tea. Okay. I'm gonna try and not take up all the time, because this is a subject I can speak heartfelt about, because I am a journalist in this area. Graduated from Point Park University with my journalism and communications degree. And I started off with one of my professors, two of my professors that I'm very thankful for. That's Joan Williams and Helen Fallon. Now, these are two white women, because at the time there were no Black professors of journalism there. Enter into this place of business. Now you have it, but now back then.
No, we don't. I can't say that it's any better today.
Yeah. Okay. So, the problem of diversity in the newsrooms, they say we're going to have diversity. It said, oh, well, I can't find any candidates. Well, we provide candidates, but they're not hired. So Rachael, who was a member of I'm the vice president of the Pittsburgh Black Media Federation. We've been in formation since 1973. We actually predate the National Association of Black Journalists. We advocate for Black journalists in the newsroom. And the thing is that we're not tokens. We bring something to that newsroom, to that culture, but we're not seen as bringing anything. We're seen as, you're just to make our numbers look good. You're not valued for the things that we bring. We're not valued for the different thought, because when you talk about racism, it comes in part from the media. The media can help shape that idea of race. And when you don't have someone of color in your newsroom, or when you do have someone of color in your newsroom, as Rachael in his piece has shown, you don't listen to them, you don't believe in them, you don't hear them, you don't even think their community is worthwhile unless there is a murder, so that you can highlight that, they're so bad. That's part of the problem. Diversity in the newsroom is so important, especially in Pittsburgh, because then you will value us as human beings. You will see us, because there are those of us in that newsroom who see us, who hear us, who see the people of Pittsburgh as we are, as who we truly are, human beings, and write those stories. But when you don't have that voice, oh my goodness, this is what you have. You have that fear. You have that, oh, I didn't know Black people did that. When we do our journalism workshop, our multimedia workshop, we've been doing it for 37 years. And our kids go into newsrooms. The first day, I didn't know you can speak like that. That's such an eloquent speaker. Wow. I mean, even I'm being told, oh, you sound white. What does white sound like? Educated? Mm-hmm. So what you're saying is because I'm Black. Oh, by the way, I'm a West Indian. Okay, let me clear that up for a lot of people listening. I'm a Black West Indian. So if you say, oh well, you're not proud to be an American, yes, I'm proud to be an American, but I'm not ashamed to say I'm from an island. Okay, so when you hear the accent come through, that's why. But anyway, pulling all that back, when you talk and you look at our journal, to say that a Black person speaking eloquently is white, or for a white person to look at me and say, oh wow, you speak so eloquently, you're not showing me up, you're showing yourself up.
Well, yeah, and we appreciate that, and it would be from one side where what is that line of where it looks like we're just doing this to feel good and feel good versus doing good. And I think, and we'll get to that, I think, even more again when we have we talk about the Mr. Rooney Rule. But in the meantime, the next question
Rooney Rule.
No, the Mr. Rooney Rule. Not a good listener. All right. So, all right.
That wasn't a good listener.
Yeah, right. All right. So this goes right into our next question. And as far as hiring people of color and knowing people of color and being involved in organizations that support people of color, like the Pittsburgh Black Media Federation, how do we enhance that? And again, and we'll start with you, Arthur, in the fact that how, and I guess the question is more is how do we enhance that? But how do we make sure it's felt as genuine? Because if I hire somebody Black in our company or of Asian or whatever, but if I want to make sure that they know that it's genuine versus I'm just doing this to help lift somebody up, I think is what kind of Olga had said. So how do we make sure, and how do we make sure that the person I hire of color knows that?
I think that's.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yep.
So Arthur, can we start with you?
Yeah. In terms of letting that individual know that they weren't hired just to check a box, I mean, that can be very difficult, but I think the biggest thing is it's going to take more than just hiring one minority. Because right now, when you hire a minority, that's exactly how it comes off. It comes off as, oh, all right, that's the token Black guy. I mean, you see it in a ton of workplaces. And a lot of times, I know I've been that guy before where you're the only person of color in there. And it's a very awkward situation at times for the people around you. But the thing that I will say is this. If you're truly hiring based off of qualification, then that should never be an issue. It should never be a concern. Now, a lot of times that isn't the case because we've been in places where we see non-minorities who are nowhere near qualified or can do the job half as good as a minority that has these opportunities and have these jobs because they may know somebody in there or because they may look like somebody that is in there. To me, that's always been a big issue. I feel like if I'm good enough or if I'm the best candidate, I should get that opportunity regardless of whatever circumstance or rule or make-believe brotherhood that you want to abide by. I think when we start seeing more of that take place, when you start seeing more people in power hiring people solely based on their ability, regardless if they're minorities, if they're male or female, then I think we won't have that issue or that concern of if you're only hiring this guy to check a box or not.
Amen.
Yeah. Anybody else want to jump in on that?
Oh, I'm going to jump in with 2 feet. because
with a running start.
Go ahead, OG.
With a running start.
Get him, OG. Get him.
Because I'm telling you right now, I'm shaking up now. Like Arthur, I'm gonna be the running back. I'm gonna dash through. He made that hole for me. He made that hole for me. So I'm gonna go through. Okay. So when you talk about affirmative action. That's the little ghost behind a lot of people like affirmative action. That's when affirmative action is designed to hire the most qualified person, giving that African American the opportunity, their foot in the door to be hired, not to hire them as the token, but to get their foot in the door. Because sometimes if you see a name that says LaQuisha, they were like, oh no, that's too ghetto. Oh no, we can't, without even looking at her resume, just her name causes a problem. And when people heard my name, Olga George, actually, one person actually said to me, Olga, I thought you were white. Oops, out of their mouth. Why? Because they were looking for a certain criteria and it wasn't really Black. Okay, so don't hire based on Black, hire based on qualifications. So when that Black person comes in, they know they're not that token. They're not that person trying to make you're hiring them to make you feel good. You're hiring them because they are the most qualified. And trust and believe, we know when we're qualified. We know when we should be getting this job because we know I know my depths. I know my strengths and my weaknesses. So if I'm going to get hired, I'm going to get hired based on that, not because of the color of my skin. And don't deny me the opportunity, though, because of the color of my skin or my sex.
I want to add one thing, too, because it's something that the OG has taught me. that Olga's taught me over the years. That
OG.
the OG.
Oh, wait. So the white man can say it and then everybody hears it?
Oh, finally. that it's not enough to just show up when you want to hire somebody. That's the other misconception that a lot of people say, you know, we need to hire somebody. Where are the black candidates? You know, Olga's talked to me a long time about it. You know, that you've got to be present all the time. You got to be there when, you know, when you're not hiring somebody and when you're just, you need to be part of the community. You need to be in contact with people of color all the time. So,
well,
just adding that. So, Olga, you can still harass me. It's fine.
Okay.
It's kind of your thing, so that's good.
I wanted to add in real quick too.
Go ahead, Frzy.
From what I'm seeing too, right, it even goes beyond that, right? Because once they hire them, once they're in there, appreciating their abilities and acknowledging their talents, right, and acknowledging the work that they put in, right, and understanding that because of the color of their skin, majority of the time they have to work 10 times harder than their white counterparts to even get to the point where they're at. So you have someone like a Steve Harvey who's created this large platform of beautiful black entertainment for America of all colors, who gets canceled because Kelly Clarkson decides she right. And these are the things that stand out, right? And you go, wow, that's amazing. You hear the story about Oprah being called, being on the air, and her anchor saying that she was like a gorilla, right? And then they fire her, and now she's one of the richest, most popular, iconic figures in media today, right? But thinking about, she got that job. What happened? You know what I mean? Once she got that job, what did she have to go through to get that job? So, you know, those are the things that also we have to understand, and that people have to recognize, especially in these positions of power, that it's not just about, you know, giving some electricity, but appreciating the light bulb at the same time.
You know, when you say they're all saying you teach a person, you give a person a fish, they eat for one day.
Yeah.
You teach a person to fish, they eat all the days of their life. That is not just for the person getting the food, but also that fisherman who's giving that fish. You know, it works both ways. Otherwise, you know, it doesn't work for the community.
Right, but our problem right now is that the people that are teaching us how to fish claim that they own the ocean.
Oh, snap. I want to touch on something Arthur said.
Sure, Felicia.
He mentioned how a black person being hired, they're still going to be looked at as a token, or they somehow got that job because they're black. And I just want to point on that part of it, because then that's that internal stuff that, you know, we as black people have to sit there and like, we got to wash that stuff away, because we are going to we've been looked at that way. And it's upsetting and it bothers me, but it's one of those things that we can't pass that on to our children, can't pass that on to the other generations. Don't even say that if our counterparts are seen as that way. I think this is where the optimism is in my life right now, is that their counterparts, everyone else, is going to point out how, you know, somebody is assuming that Arthur got a job because he's black, and someone else is going to be that witness to call him out. Like, why would you say something stupid like that? Before, I don't think in the past anybody would have spoken up. They would just, you know, I'm just picking on you, Andrew, today. Andrew pointed out that Arthur's the black guy in the office, and you know how he got that job. And everybody else in the office would just be like, well, just giggle or just walk away. And or just say, well, you know how Andrew is. It's just one of those things that's implied that we just know how he is, but we don't talk about it. But I think this is where my heart tells me, I hope that, and the optimism I have is that now we have witnesses. People are coming out that have said before, like those baby boomers are now speaking up and saying, you know what? Maybe how Barbara really was racist. And I just always thought she was just she just was funny, you know? So that's what I think is going on now.
Yeah, and I just wanted to chime in to whoever talked about retention, that hiring folks is step one, and then having some cultural competency in your organization to make those folks feel included and feel valued and feel like they were not hired because they're the token Black person or brown person, and feel respected is key, right? Because so many, in the journalism report, so many of the great journalists aren't in Pittsburgh anymore because it wasn't comfortable, right? And in so many companies, like, it's not comfortable. It's like, okay, great, we're going to hire some people that don't look like us, and then it has to be authentic. It can't be that checking the box. And it can happen. My dad, guy from Pakistan, was an assistant district attorney in Beaver County, like whitest county. And he was, right, Amber?
91% in holding.
Yes, there you go, right? I mean, he was the only brown person for miles. I mean, but people understood that he was an excellent prosecutor. He, was hired for his ability. He retained that job for a really long time because people around him cared and wanted him to stay and made him feel valued and comfortable. And if the Beaver County District Attorney's Office can do it, y'all, I'm gonna keep my cynical optimism.
Well, to go off of what you're saying, since you're hitting Beaver County, I'm gonna say this. So if you feel valued in a company, that should be the basic, decent human being thing you have to do. Any person who hires you, you should make that person, feel, and make the hiree or hire person feel valued. In the story. I mean, there shouldn't be anything extra. Because he's Black, I have to do extra. Don't do the extra, just do the basic, decent thing. And then to go back to Beaver County, one of the things you see out here is you'll have one or two Black people that they see all the time, and then next you know it becomes the norm. Like, oh, we do have Black people, we are inclusive, and we are doing this because you have seen one in your daily life. And just because you've seen one in your daily life does not necessarily mean that you have been inclusive and you're diverse, and I had to come to that realization because I kept getting upset with my area. And I'm like, man, I'm the only one. And then they started hitting me. It's all the leadership is all white. And they don't realize that every table that I'm sitting at, they're all related, and I'm not, but I'm the stereotype that should be related to everybody, but they're all related to each other. And they're, I don't know how to put it. The best way is just, they don't realize just because they see me, they think that they have some diversity because there's one of me. Right. They don't ask questions from me. They don't listen. And if I do say something, then my past comes into place and I hear she's articulate or she's argumentative or she's the angry Black woman. And I have to not bring all that from my past to the table because, like, I have children and my goal is not to pass that on to them and help them just understand that there are good human beings and crappy ones. And that's literally, why is it though, Felicia, that you can't be your authentic self? Why can't you be angry? Why can't you show emotion? It's like Black people have to behave a certain way to be accepted, to be at the table. And when you talk about the conversation, it's like, people of color, we have to act a certain way to make white people comfortable. The minute you get upset, the minute you show an emotion, oh, you the angry Black woman. Oh, what's wrong with her? You can't be human. Yep, that is my story. Honestly, I created this. I have a team of people with me, and we have this hyper local website out in my town called Ambridge Connection. And I am the Black person that goes around and does things. I've walked into businesses and they've yelled "nigger" as soon as I walk in. And then I just smile and I just keep going, because the moment I react to that is the moment my project is shut down. The moment I speak up for myself, the moment I am an angry Black person. So I've gotten to a point that I have to walk a certain way, and no one can ever tell me I did something else, because I know I have to keep my tone a certain way. So when I'm coaching football, it's a different story. I mean, you're going to hear everything, when I'm coach. But when I'm out here in that community and trying to be the community advocate, empowering people, I really have to watch my tone. I have to watch my mannerism. I have to watch my facial expressions, because everything I do, and I hate that. And I think now people are starting to see that, you know what, why are we putting her in this box? Why are we doing this? Well, better yet, I'm hoping, that's where I'm hoping people are starting to see. But in I'm trying to make sure that the people around me, that we know that, look, we don't have to do that anymore. We need to be our authentic selves. We need to understand what stuff we brought from our past to the table too, because this has been passed down to us each year. You know, mom picked up the phone. What did she do with her voice when it was business?
Right.
Yeah, I ain't gotta say it.
Yeah,
You know,
I mean,
you know, changed her tone. She changed her tone because we knew who was on the phone. You know, those are things that we were taught. You know, so I need to make sure I'm not passing that on, because I want my kids and everybody to know to be their authentic self. You know, and they want to act a fool, then you don't get the job. But if you want to be the best one there, you're getting it.
But I mean, it kind of comes from even from the beginning of the situation of recognizing that in the beginning of this, we were considered 3/5 a human being, right?
Mm-hmm.
We weren't, right? We're not asking for more. We're asking for equal. Treat us equal to that point. So it's like what makes me tired, right, is that either we're 3/5 of a human being or we're absolutely perfect. Right?
Well, but you got to go back. We were 3/5 of a human being because they didn't want. If we were a whole person, that means that it comes back to what Rooney was saying earlier about power and influence. Back then, when it comes down to us having like 3/5 of a human being, they didn't want us to count as a whole person, because that means they would have had to count us per capita, or they would have had to count us in their votes. You know, how many people lived in that area, so they had to count us in those votes. So all of this is all about power and money the whole way through. You know, and it's unfortunate that with us being with just brown people, we were at the butt end of all this. We're like, yeah, okay, you're getting the power and influence, but now, like, I got all this trauma I'm bringing with me every single day that I'm trying to unlearn and try to not allow to stop me and shut me down from just, you know, being like the bad person that I am.
But that's why they don't. You know. But that's why they don't want that, right? That's literally not only the underlying goal, but subconsciously as well, right? Because you don't want to. They're scared to give Black people the same amount of power as them, or even more. Because the big fear is that if we give Black people more power than us, they just might treat us like we've treated them. They're lucky to be asking for equality, not revenge.
But I don't think all white people are thinking that way. I don't believe that they come into the story with, hey, you know what, they want our power and they're going to take it from us. You know, I think there's just this implicit bias type thing that they're not realizing that this is what they're putting on us. You know, like I said, I started something out here. I went to a meeting. I said, hey, why are you only advertising your public event in one part of town?
All right.
They purposely, the other part of town, there was more brown people, or it could have been lower. It could be classism, because now you got to figure out, is it racism or is it classism? What way are they coming at with it, right?
Cousins, right?
All right, guys, we love the band.
We don't want to cut you guys off, but we do want to make sure we get through the conversation.
Because no, do not be sorry.
We want to be appreciative of the questions you guys put together.
We love the conversation for sure. So we're actually going to kind of combine the next two a little bit, just because we did take a good bit of necessary time on the last question. And not that this one has any less importance, but they sort of go hand in hand. So let's talk about how our biases are challenged. So Jim, you recently discussed your thoughts about putting yourself in circumstances where biases can be challenged. Why do you think this is important? And we also segue that question obviously into what I'm sure everyone who is born and raised, or at least has lived in Pittsburgh for a little bit of time, knows that there is something that exists called the Rooney Rule. And obviously we're going to segue into that. And Jim, you could start. And by all means, we had designated that a certain couple of people were going to answer that as well. You know, feel free, whomever wants to piggyback off of Jim's answer.
So, you know, there's a lot to be said here. I've spent a lot of time in the last 5 years of my life looking at my father, the Rooney Rule, the idea of bias. Andrew wrote an excellent book as well that looks at some of these similar topics. Arthur obviously was inside this organization for several years. And look, there's a lot of challenges, and one of the reasons I want to bring this up was that we have an honest conversation about the challenges about this policy that, you know, relates to me, relates to Pittsburgh to some degree, so that we can talk about the challenges. I guess though I always sort of start and talk about some of the things that were done well, and the reason I think that's important right now is that, you know, as Arthur said, you know, there's this moment, and this moment is creating, you know, this sense of you know sort of this massive energy, and it's somewhat cathartic, but I hope that we're also going to move beyond sort of an experience that may make some people feel good, and again, I think this applies a lot to white people, that they really bought into an experience of a moment and gets to a transformative situation, that the state of the world is beyond what it was before George Floyd, and I hope that happens. You know, I hope that happens sooner rather than later. I, like others, have my doubts that it's going to happen quickly, but that's the goal, is that we're really looking for a transformed state, and that's going to require policies. That's not just going to be a situation that you know we feel into this experience and then things are different. So you know, a couple of things that my father did well, and again, then we can have some honest dialogue about the fact that the progress isn't anywhere near where it should be on this policy. But he did really get, you know, folks involved in the design and the development of the policy who were Black men. And actually, I try to tell his story that you know, he was this famous and successful guy, relatively famous and successful guy, but throughout this career, you know, he had partners, and many of them were Black men. You have Tony Dungy, you have Bill Nunn, you have Gene Upshaw, who was the head of the NFL Players Association. You have Tom Williamson, who was a lawyer who actually worked in the Clinton administration, and became involved in the Rooney Rule policy. So when he did these things, whether it was the Steelers of the 70s, the Rooney Rule, there's a couple other things we can talk about. You know, he went out of his way to really try to, well, I guess out of his way is not the right thing, out of his way relative to what was the status quo at the time, to try and make sure that it wasn't just a white guy making a design. He had this deep understanding both of making sure that, you know, you brought people in who had different points of view, but that you were also interested in creating a sense of trust. He understood that there was and rightfully should be a lack of trust. So I could go on and on. As I said, I spent 5 years on this. But there were several things that he did that I think are important lessons that we say, okay, these are things that if you're white and in power, you know, you're going to make changes. Here are some examples you should look at because it's the right thing to do, it's the responsible thing to do, and then especially in the Steelers case, you know, we became successful because of Bill Nunn, because my father brought Bill Nunn in. You know, the Steelers became a more successful team. And then, as I said, we can talk about, you know, unfortunately, or maybe to some, the reality of the situation, because it's so you know, integrated into the structures of how all business works and how our culture and society work, these limitations. But you know, I don't know. I feel like I tried to combine two answers into one thing. I don't know that I gave more than sort of some information, but fundamentally, you know, I wanted to bring the rule up as an experience of you know, where there are examples that, but when white people are in power, you know, some of the best practices they can and should be applying, because we need these changes to be sustainable. And let's be frank and look at where, you know, it has failed and has not achieved the you know, outcomes that we would like.
So, Jim, there's a follow-up question, because we have some others that want to answer as well. But what did your father specifically view, and what made him, I mean, other than being a wonderful gentleman, but, you know, what made him understand the need for the Rooney Rule, and let alone, some of us can understand certain things, and then to be so passionate enough to take this forward. But what were his observances and things like that made him that passionate to push such a huge organization this far?
Well, you know, I mean, again, I talk a lot about it in a 250-page book, but
sure,
I think you go back to his experience growing up. One thing he talked about is a very famous Pittsburgh boxing match between Joe Louis and Billy Conn. And, my grandfather, they lived on the north side and they had friends from all over the north side in Manchester, and they were in front of this radio. And, there were two black friends there, and my dad was 8, 9, 10. And, Billy Conn lost. And Billy Conn was the Pittsburgh kid. He was a boxer from Greenfield. And, everyone was really bummed, but the two African-American kids were excited. And he said that really taught him in this moment that, this sense of belonging to a group was such a powerful experience for these boys that moment just really sort of opens up his eyes. I know that's not the best sort of business answer that folks would like, but he always talked about that as one moment that was really important, where his eyes were open to the difference between a Black American and himself.
Andrew, thank you. And that's the practical experience, right? But Andrew, your follow-up on this.
Yeah. Thanks for, and Jim, thanks for mentioning the book. I appreciate it. I think the key with the Rooney Rule too is that it's not just about football, right? I mean, I was on a hiring committee at Point Park recently, and I brought up the Rooney Rule, and somebody said, "Oh, why you bring that up? That's about football." And I'm like, no. This is something that we should be, bringing throughout society. That whenever we're going to hire, we need to make sure that there are diverse candidates. And as the NFL's finding out, it's not enough to just say that we're going to have one. We need to have lots of them. We need to, this needs to be part of our whole process. And the Steelers, I mean, I think they deserve credit for, and Jim's family deserves credit for, putting the team out there at a time when it wasn't easy to be colorblind. And the thing that he mentioned, Bill Nunn, and Bill's the center of my book that I wrote. And the key to Bill's success was that he was able to go into the historically Black colleges and universities and find the players that the other white scouts couldn't find. I mean, they knew that there was talent there, but they didn't know how to go into those communities. And, if we look back through history, that's really a metaphor for the things we were talking about just a moment ago, how we do a better job at hiring. And, the reason Nunn was able to go into the HBCUs and find these players was because he had been there. He had been part of the community. And the reason the white scouts couldn't find them is because they weren't part of that community. They didn't know how to go in there. They didn't know how to ask questions and how to be present. And so that's a great metaphor for where we all need to be today, to be more involved and to be more invested, not just when we're hiring, but all the time.
But I would say for Jim and Andrew, since, both of you are talking about the Rooney Rule and everything, is the sense of how is it when you're the only white person in a Black room?
Which is a great question, because Olga put me on the spot. I went to the Pittsburgh Black Media Federation meeting, and I was the only white person in the room. And at the end of the meeting, she turned to me and said, "Why are you here?" And it's because it is important to be there. It's important to, and I think for white people too, it's important to put ourselves in those situations where we are the only white person in the room, so that we know what it feels like when, and as Olga pointed out that night, it's something that she feels all the time. When she walks in, she's the only Black person in the room. And so, as white people, we've been afraid. Honestly, we've been afraid to talk about race. We've been afraid to put ourselves in those situations. And, to the extent that we're going to get past this moment, this moment of racism and separation, we need to get comfortable at being uncomfortable.
Exactly. That's exactly it. That's how we pin this down, is to try to say uncomfortable. Sarah, were you ready to say something, Sarah? I didn't want to over talk you. No, you're good? Okay.
I'm good.
So,
I agree.
We'd like to move on. We are running on time here. We want to make sure we keep going. But again, thank you to the
fact of the uncomfortable.
Yeah, I love
That's
that.
so
but
important.
yeah, that's exactly what we're trying to. we need to not be uncomfortable to have that, whether I'm a black person in a room full of white people or a white person in a room full of black people. Everybody, is uncomfortable. But first, we want to make sure we give credit to our partners. Sorgatron Media, Mike Sorg is doing all of this stuff for us technically. The Pittsburgh Black Media Federation, thank you for promoting this. Point Park University Center for Mediation, of which Andrew is the director, the first and only director of it at this point. And Ambridge Connection, Felicia is part of that. And the Pittsburgh Media Partnership, which is again a group based that we're part of as well. But Frzy, we have watched you're a friend. I feel very comfortable having
all our friends.
Any kind of conversation. No, we've hung out with Frzy probably, and Arthur, and Frzy, like we've had odd conversation.
Some odd experience.
And you even said, hey, call me when you have these questions, which is kind of cool, but this is why we want you to start with this question is, what is the difference between Black Lives Matter and All Lives Matter? Because, we're not allowed to have opinions, but
did you see Olga's eye roll?
The first thing is listening, right? It's a matter of listening, because as soon as I hear a certain word, a certain phrase, I turn off, right? Like Felicia said earlier, I hear racist, I go, well, it's racist. We're talking about race. That kind of thing, right? But I say, wait a minute, what are you talking about, race? But so let's address this question. What is the difference between Black Lives Matter and All Lives Matter, please?
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate it. For one, yes. We've had these conversations. You've called me on the phone to ask me questions. We've had these great talks, right? And that's what it's all about. It's about being comfortable. But I think to start off with, I've been waiting for this. My hands, I've been rubbing them together. You know what I mean? I feel like OG out here. You know what I'm saying? I'm ready to go. By the way, Andrew, you're coming to the cookout. We'll talk about that later. You know what I mean? Somebody get him a plate quick. But no, I think what's interesting, right, is that when a lot of people hear Black Lives Matter, they think it means only Black Lives Matter, right? And that's the big misconception, at least from the racist side. I mean, I'm not a racist myself, but I've been yelled at by a lot of them. So I feel like we're close. But that's the big thing, right? It's them, you know what I mean? Them understanding the difference between it, right? That we are asking for acknowledgement of what's going on here. And what pisses me off the most is that this All Lives Matter thing has become a rebuttal, right? People seem to like, that's their comeback. Like they say it and they like flick their hair like, oh, I got you, right? But what they need to understand is that All Lives Matter is not a rebuttal, right? It was what was said first. It was what the Constitution said first. Black Lives Matter is the rebuttal. Black Lives Matter is us asking for help, and that you understanding that as a people, we are dying, right, at a substantial rate, right, aggressively, being murdered equally, and no acknowledgement is coming from that. In order for all lives to matter, Black lives has to matter. Right? You can't say that. What's interesting to me, too, and not even make it political, which I can't even believe what I'm about to say is political, but the same people that say all lives matter are the same people that say are anti-mask, right? Which is also weird in a way, because you're also, right, it's all about wearing the mask is about helping others, right? So the whole point of this thing is if all lives matter, it's just like the black on black crime, right? That seems to be something that people say, too, when it comes to all lives matter. The big thing about that is if all lives matter, why ain't y'all in Chicago protesting as well when a black person gets killed or a black person gets slain, right? So it's very interesting to see how much anger that makes, or putting Black Lives Matter as a sign on the street, whether it's written to take up the whole Fifth Avenue or it's written in a kid's driveway with chalk, that people go out of their way to erase it, to move it. And that's what we talk about being comfortable with being uncomfortable, is that no one wants to have that conversation. No one wants to acknowledge that conversation and see what's different. And I'm a spiritual religious guy. And I've had these, I try to be positive. Even when I'm online getting called names on Facebook, I try to be like, well, let's have a conversation. Let's talk. Most people who are on this All Lives Matter things don't have a lot of people of color as friends, right? So I want to talk to you and kind of figure out what's going on with that. But most of them are like, well, I'm a Christian man. I'm da-da-da-da-da. But if we, right? But like I think that's the big problem of it, is that like if we go back even to the Bible, right? And we go back to the story of Jesus walking with 100 sheep, right? And that one sheep goes away. And Jesus leaves the 99 sheep to go take care of that one sheep. It doesn't mean that the 99 sheep aren't important. It just means that one sheep is in trouble. We are in trouble right now. And all we're asking for, it makes me get emotional, because all we're asking for is help. Like, why can't we just get help? We just want to be equal. We're not asking for more. We just want to be equal with you guys. And the fact that history has shown us, and that's why I'm trying to, as myself, I'm trying to be a young Black man that's understanding of ignorance, right? Because I'm getting tired of ignorance, right? I'm getting tired of the blissful look away, of the like, oh, I can't believe this is happening now, and getting those phone calls from my white friends that are checking on me to make sure I'm okay. Like, you didn't see that? You don't, what you mean? You don't, right? You don't have Google. You didn't see that Black men getting hung with a postcard in the 18th, right? Like, you don't see that. You don't know who Harriet Tubman is, and you don't know what happened to Martin Luther. This is not new. We talking about it because you have to. And that's what's bothering me a lot. So when we say Black Lives Matter, we mean that we want to matter just as much as the all lives you're talking about. So if you guys can just help us, that's it. And guess what? If you help us, if you can make this thing easy, we'll stop saying it, because all lives will matter. Then we can start saying that too. And then you'll never have to hear Black Lives Matter. I mean, we're going to still keep the mirror on the street because it's dope. But, you know what I'm saying? That, so there's a big difference, right? Like, you know, and I'll end on this, is the whole house on fire, right? Right? It's like a house being on fire, and the fire truck coming in, and somebody whose house isn't on fire is like, well, what about my house? Why aren't you spraying my house with a water hose? And they're like, well, that house is on fire. Like, but all houses, right? And then you see people starting, and it starts to become a thing where people start to use it vindictively in a way where July 4th came. People are like, well, I'm not celebrating July 4th because all countries matter, right? Let's understand that we're just trying to come together. That's the point of this. So I'm glad that though it may bother some people and though it may get under their nerves or it may hurt them, at least you're hearing us now. Because in order for you to say all lives matter, that means you have to acknowledge that Black lives matter.
Felicia.
Yeah.
Jinx, y'all owe me a soda.
That was good.
No, thank you. I felt important.
Wow.
All right, so thank you for letting me answer this, and I agree with what you're saying, that about the all lives and the Black Lives Matter. I think that's I deal with that. You guys know I'm in that area where the majority of us, most of the people out here are whites, right? So what I deal with when they hear the buzz phrase Black Lives Matter, it's done switched from Black Lives Matter or Blue Lives Matter and All Lives Matter to you're terrorists, communist people, and socialism and all this other stuff. So it's morphed into something different. And what I'm feeling when I talk to each person that I'm around, it's different from every person. So Black Lives Matter ideally would be the very simple, we all matter. And it's just we're trying to get back human equal rights, like, you know, accurate history versus partial history. You know, you don't gotta, you know, just little things like that. Recognize, be a witness when you're at the table. Empower versus be savior. But then, so I think now when people hear that buzz phrase, I think you have to like put that disclaimer up front. Like, there's the organization, there's the foundation, there's the or there's the .com, the .org,
Right.
there's the signs, you know, and you have to figure out, because everybody wants to know, like, well, where am I sending my money? What am I doing this? Well, you know, if you support Black Lives Matter, you're a communist. What?
Right.
Each person has a different way of they're looking at it, and I believe the majority of the world, like if I see, but yeah, let's just stay here in America. If I see the Amish having a sign that says Black Lives Matter, I'm pretty sure they're not sending money to some organization for Black Lives Matter. If I see people in another country supporting Black Lives Matter, I'm pretty sure they're not supporting this one organization out here. So I think that's the one thing I want most people to understand, that when you see Black Lives Matter, it is a global thing. They're looking at all this, and look, I'm a woman, a Black woman, a dark-skinned Black woman, so I'm the dark Black woman. So I got it even worse than everyone else. And then, guess what? I'm in the football world. So I'm coaching. So I'm dealing with men who treat me differently because I'm trying to coach. You know, so not only you got to see me because I'm Black, you got to see me because I'm a woman too. I just really want you to see me as a coach.
Right.
I just want you to see me as an employee or a contractor or whatever it is that you're hiring me for. That's what I want to see me as a person. See me as Felicia. That's the biggest thing. But this whole thing with Black Lives Matter, I really, really, really would love for people to understand that not everybody is sending money to one organization. That organization is doing their movement. Like every single town has a group of people who are You know, I'm raising money for breast cancer awareness. Well, where are you sending that breast cancer awareness money to? Well, it's for my mama's aunt. That's where the spaghetti dinner is for this
Right.
person right here. We're sending money to this one person. So understand, each person who's doing something with Black Lives Matter, it means something to them. And what I love to see is that it is a global movement. So we all need to look at, how are we treating other people? Are we treating them like decent human beings? Or are we sitting there not pointing out the things? So many people are quick to point out. I'll get off my pedestal in one more second, all right? I look at the Y and the Z generation. Those generations are like, my daughter is, she told me she was polyamorous one year. And then the other, I was like, I don't know what that means, you know? And then she was gay one year. And then she's, you know, now she's married to a guy now. And I'm just like, you know what? I just sit back and just, God got her, you know, I'm okay. But the thing is, when I go with her groups of friends, when I'm around her friends, if one of her friends changed gender, they are quick. I knew the person as a child growing up. So I was like, how's she doing? It's a he. They go by he. I'm sorry. That witnessing is so powerful because I feel I'm out of place because I accidentally called my daughter's friend a she because I grew up knowing her as a she. But now she's transitioned to a he. But that witness power is, I will never misgender her again. Him again. I just did it. Don't tell her I said that. Okay. But
Sarah, you had talked about, you know, your Black Lives Matter and sign earlier on this for anybody who didn't see earlier. But so when you see the Black Lives Matter, you know, when you have kids, and what do you do? What do you recommend as far as when people see that and they say, hey, all lives matter, cop lives matter, you know, where are you with, you know, how do you do that?
Sure. I mean, my brother-in-law is a police officer for Allegheny County. So, you know, I walk that line for sure. And I think it was Frzy that said, all lives can't matter until Black lives matter. That's it, man. I think we've all seen the meme of the little girl holding her poster that says, you know, we're just saying we just want to be equal. We're not saying you don't matter. And, you know, people have said to me, why don't Muslim lives matter? Don't women's lives matter? Yes, of course they do. But it's not our moment, you know, it's the Black Lives Matter moment. And once Black lives matter, then all the other lives that don't matter also right now, the trans lives, and that's another thing, you know, when we say Black Lives Matter, we mean all Black lives matter. Black lives, Black, you know, all Black lives matter, because the trans and queer population in the Black community is really asking for help.
Right.
Well, the only reason I brought that up. Yeah, the only reason I brought that up is the fact that everybody is witnessing and speaking up for others. So why is it so much harder to do it for race? Why is it hard to say that, okay, this person's sitting here in a meeting and we are truly dismissing them? There is literally, and we know how Barb is in the meeting. We know how Michael is in the meeting. We know how these people are in the meeting, and we just allow it. You know, but if it's their sexual orientation, we're quick to witness and say, no, call them he, they, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm seeing what I'm seeing right now, when I'm talking to people, I'm hearing people speak, is they're quick to witness to say, no, stop it. This isn't right. And this is what gives me my optimistic view of the future, that we are okay. We're moving. I mean, like Arthur said, we're in different stages. We had to go through anger. I don't know what step we're on. You know, we're
I think we're still on anger, maybe. I don't know if we've gotten past it.
I think the big thing for it, right, is that understanding that Black Lives Matter, supporting Black Lives Matter doesn't mean you're anti-white, right?
Right.
And that's something that's big. I have white people in my family. I'm surrounded. You know, especially being the artist I am, signed to the label I'm signed to, right? I'm continuously, especially right now, one of the only Blacks in the room. You know, I ran into a big thing this year, which a lot of you guys know about me trying to be the first young Black musician on the cover of Pittsburgh magazine for Pittsburgh of the Year, right? And trying to bridge these gaps of the community. And I feel blessed that I've had that opportunity. But I know that like I was saying earlier when we were talking about the whole 3/5, right? Is that it's just trying to explain to people that we feel like we are either seen as half a man, right? Or we have to be absolutely perfect. And I had a discussion with someone the other day when they were like yelling at me, like, well, you know what, then that's what you're gonna have to be, because black on black crime in Chicago, and black lives really matter, then you guys wouldn't be killing yourself and right? And all that good stuff. And I had to explain to them, they're like, well, you should try to be perfect. I was like, well, you know what? If that's what you guys want, at least I have a good role model, because Jesus looked like me. So I'll be all right.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be good. Figure it out.
Okay.
Well,
Actually, Frzy, you and we are in the interest of time. Are all of our panelists okay with staying on a little bit longer here? Because we have
we are past the 8
o'clock.
Is everybody good? Okay, cool.
Okay,
so no, go ahead. So, and Frzy, I know that you wanted this question. So, we talked about the black on black. You started to talk about that a little bit ago. The black on black crime. Well, look, if why don't you guys go protest it? You talked about that. So let's just continue that conversation for a couple of minutes, because I know it's one you had asked to talk about.
Well, I'll make it, because I know some people are going to jump in and stuff, and I'm loving the different perspectives of everyone, especially. I'm so happy like Sarah's here too, right? Because Sarah even falls into part of the one drop rule, right? Where she's tan enough to get that full blown racism, which is great.
No, you didn't.
That's my girl. We out here. And I can only imagine the things like she was talking about her father and what he went through to get to the place where he went, and that's another reason why he does such a good job in Beaver County. Shout out to Beaver. But here's what I'll say, because I have so many stats, and 85%. White people kill white people when growing up and being placed, the race that you surround yourself with usually kills themselves the most. I can go down to stats for days. I got stats next thing I got them in my brain. But what I've learned is giving people examples, right? So you see someone talk about, I feel that, like, especially right now with Black Lives Matter, that black people in general, especially in America, are an endangered species. Right, by the rate of how we're moving, about the rate of the things that are happening to us. So you look at someone who looks at, like, let's say a lion, let's say a red lion. There's no red lions, but let's just say a red lion, right? And everybody goes, well, this red lion is an endangered species. We need to save this red lion because it's important. There's not a lot of them left. Now imagine that person driving to that safari and they see a red lion kill another red lion for survival. They're not going to go, oh, well, that lion killed that other lion, so they're not important anymore. Let them die out. Right? That's not how it works. Especially when you see, whether we're talking about an animal or a human being, whenever you see a people, a thing, right? Something that exists in peril, something that is lack thereof, that has no support, that is dying, that is killing each other, that is so oppressed, that survival means even getting rid of the people that look like you. That's when you help. That's when you help the most. That's where it's most important. So to look at that, for that to be a rebuttal, for some in their head to go, well, you're oppressed and you've been slaves and you've been whipped and you've been had to drink out of separate water fountains and been blasted with water hoses and you've been put into this small ghetto place where the system has been set up to make you guys fight against each other and stay on welfare and do this and do that. And we put drugs in your system on purpose. And black on black crime was created by the Nixon era, right? That was then reinforced by the Reagan era. We've done all this to you and then you did it. It worked. We oppressed you. You're still killing yourselves. And now that you're asking for help, we're not going to help you because you're doing exactly what we wanted you to do. It doesn't make any sense,
Who wants to jump in with that?
Frzy, the thing is, the term black on black crime is
not
something
real.
That is pushed in the media. It is definitely not real, because if black on black crime is real, then Hispanic on Hispanic crime is real. Then white on white crime is real.
Right.
And nobody says white on white crime. When Oklahoma bombing happened, they didn't say white on white crime.
Right. When schools get shot up.
When schools get shot up, we don't say white on white crime.
Right.
Okay. And that's the same thinking behind this idea of black on black crime. But the difference is, the reason you don't say white on white crime or Hispanic and Hispanic crime is that you want to show black people continuously as inhuman, that we don't even value ourselves. So if they don't value themselves, why should we value them? That's
right.
That whole media idea of presenting a race of people as inhuman, which is one of the reasons why, a black man could get in an elevator with a white woman, and the first thing she's going to do is step back and hold her purse.
Right.
Not because you're bad, but the idea that you have to be bad because that's all that's presented. So this black on black crime, that I hate it when black people say it. I hate it when the media pushes forward because it's an idea of making black people inhuman.
Well, it's also a quick rush to remove responsibility, right?
Yes.
And it takes me back, and I mean, I know we're not talking about this, but I'm a big advocate for women's rights and domestic violence, right, and rape and things like that too, right? And also I'm a big SVU fan. Shout out to Olivia Benson. And for me, right, what bothers me as well is but it goes in the same line, in the same closet with well, she got raped. Well, she looked nice. She was asking for it, right? So I don't have to really help you. You shouldn't look so nice. You shouldn't be so pretty, right? Oh man, you shouldn't be so pretty. Like, oh man, I'm not gonna help you. You shouldn't be so oppressed. You should want to get out the ghetto. You want to be in the ghetto. Oh, you love that liquor store in every corner, right? That's the problem. But you're right? When these things happen, they're not quick to do it, because if we're gonna do that, we might as well say woman on woman crime, and right? All these small things, when every war that's ever existed was started by a man. But I digress. So I'm trying to just get to the point where we understand that it takes all of us as a group. And when you try to individualize people and you try to put them by themselves, then that's what they'll end up staying by themselves. So if we all can come together and save the next man or save the next woman, right, and do what we have to do, let's do that. It's very easy. It's very, very easy. We're taller if we stand on each other's shoulders than we are if we kick each other down.
That's a
stand on their neck.
It's a great segue.
This one is directed for Felicia, and ironically, Felicia, you were added later on, to the panel, and it's ironic because John and I had the pleasure of viewing the panel discussion that you hosted, and that's why it's so important to us that you have a voice, obviously, on this one. But one of the terms that you used and was reflected in the panel question here is, what does it mean to be true allies?
You're asking me?
What? Yeah, I'm asking you. You're like, wait.
Okay. One of the things. So, I mean, it goes off. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, go right ahead. We have you and Arthur answering this one, but by all means,
well, Arthur, I don't want to be on the same page as you. But it goes off of what OG was saying a little earlier. White allies, like, I'm not a fan of that phrase at all. I mean, we have a bunch of white Americans and a bunch of white on white crime, and now the white churches and the white this and the white that. I really want people just to be good people. Like, I don't need a person to sit here and decide today I'm going to speak up for the person next to me. You should have been doing that. So if you're going to call yourself a white ally, then you're accepting that you're accepting the fact that you know what? I have to help the Black people out. And then I have to sit here and think, what's the next level to that? I'm helping the Black people out. Am I a savior? It goes right back to that. Am I doing as a savior? This should be your checklist. You know what? Go ahead, everybody get a piece of paper out if you're white and you're watching this. If you're going to do something, first thing I want you to do is say, am I doing this because if I'm saying I'm a white ally, am I being a savior, or am I trying to empower somebody? Am I using my power and influence to help that person learn to fish? Help that person out and say, hey, if you want to get this job, you want to go ahead and make sure your resume is on point. Or, you know what, if I'm coaching somebody, literally that's all I do is I help people drop their hips or turn the other way or do something so they can do better. I'm not sitting here, I'm going to do it for you. I'm going to catch this ball for you right quick, so you don't got to do nothing. Like, you got to choose right now. Are you a savior, or are you empowering? And I can't do the white ally stuff because it's admitting to some type of a privilege you've always had. And I hate using buzz phrases. I hate using white privilege. I hate using Black privilege. I don't want to say any of those things because it's end of the day, I'm an American and I'm a woman. I don't even think I'm allowed to say woman anymore. I don't even know what the world's going to. But the point is, like, I would love for us to see a coach. I am a coach. End of the day, I'm a coach. And if all of you guys could just do that, because the ally, to be a true ally means you know when to speak up. You know when to speak up. And if you're quiet, why are you choosing to be quiet? Is it because, if I'm quiet, I might not get that promotion, or they might not be able to help me over here, or might not be able to get me to that next level. If I do speak up, they're going to prevent me from getting to this next level, Sure. So this is, again, my hope. I think that we have more witnesses now, and I'm extremely excited about these people being more witnesses and being more assertive with their voices. And that's what I'm hoping that people are. They just choose to walk from watching this video, just say, I'm assertive. I'm going to go and assert myself in this conversation and say, you know what? You're racist.
Yeah.
Arthur, you've been so quiet. You're never quiet.
I was being respectable. Everybody.
I know you were.
It's kind of like playing basketball. Everybody got to pass the ball to each other. All right, teamwork. So now the ball is back to me. I appreciate it. So, I think that the coach, if that's okay, if I call you coach, like I said, I'm following your lead. I don't know what to say right now, but you hit it on the head. That when you talked about, if you're gonna help out, what is your motive? If you're here to empower, I think that is the key part. Like you said, in terms of when you think about empowering somebody, that's not just giving them an opportunity. That's making sure that you're going to help put them in the best position possible and support them through it. Not just when it's convenient, not just when, from a national standpoint, it's safe to say that, hey, I support minorities, or I support people of color. No, if you're really doing this for the right reason, it's going to be one of those things where it becomes a part of your normal lifestyle. I don't have to physically or mentally tell myself, hey, I want to help my child out. No, it's natural because I genuinely want to do it, and it comes from a good place, a pure place. So when we're talking about allies and things along that nature, you shouldn't need to be labeled an ally. You shouldn't need to tell yourself that, hey, I want to do this because this is going to make me feel good today. No, it should become your second nature, because we're all humans. We all want to see, trust me, as an African American or as a minority, I don't just want to see minorities be successful. I want to see non-minorities be successful. I want to see women be successful. I want to see anybody and everybody be successful as well. But that's just how it naturally is for me. And I think that when we talk about a white ally, quote unquote, like I said, it feels really awkward even saying the white ally part. It just irks me. But when we talk about that element, though, just in general, like, you shouldn't need to have that label. You should be good people. Like, when I think of you, Rachael and John, I don't say that, hey, y'all my white friends. No,
I think I would laugh. I think I would laugh. Yeah.
Because y'all are just good people, and y'all are just a genuine friend. And I think when we're talking about the whole ally thing, it needs to be that same way. And I will say this, because I don't want it to come off as if we're just bashing minorities or bashing people who may have been uneducated in that form beforehand. You still have time to learn. You still have time to change. And ultimately, it's going to take a group effort. It's not going to be, just this one person changes. No, it's going to need, after that person changes, to communicate that thought process, communicate how they're supposed to operate and think with the next non-minority. So now we can ultimately have everybody thinking the right way and thinking on the same page. And then we can really have that big change that we really desire.
Well, can I jump in here a little bit?
Yes, go ahead. Yes, please, Jim.
I just want to push back a little bit. I know it's late, but I think it's so. On one hand, everything that Felicia and Arthur said is so important, and it speaks to the decency of humanity that we get to that point. But there's an actual reality here too, and the divide in education, the divide in finance, the divide in political power and political access, the divide in the civil structures with the police. These are real, and we need to do things to change policies. We need broadband to go into Black communities, for Black children to be able to learn, especially right now during the pandemic. We need to reform police, and there has to be policies that make those changes. So I want to just push back, because I come from this Catholic tradition, and Mother Teresa got a lot of money from a lot of unsavory sources, and they would say, that was blood money that you used, and she said, I don't care where it came from, I'm using it to feed the people in Calcutta that were starving to death. And, so I don't want to support anything that's pejorative. I don't, I want to be working towards changed attitudes, but I also feel like we have to be committed to these divides that are right here, right now, and work on things. Like I said, broadband to me is if we don't make a commitment to broadband, the gap between the ability for my children to be successful in the economy versus Black children is just going to grow wider and wider, and we can talk about this gap. So I said that. I love what you guys said from the decency, the humanity standpoint, but if we have to get some allies to make policy changes that are sometimes maybe not the purest, I still think we need to be making those changes and trying to find ways to get those people on board, and then hopefully through that process we can change their minds.
Well, Jim,
so what you're saying, Jim, is if we use the Catholic guilt enough,
exactly.
We're all victims of it right here. Yeah,
we accepted the Catholic guilt to get ahead. It's okay. Basically.
But that's my fear right there, because when you sit here and start talking about white ally and stuff like that, you are literally working on somebody's guilt, and this can end up going really wrong very quickly. You have people of all races that will take advantage of someone else. And this is where I'm sitting here. If you're not looking at yourself and understanding, like, okay, and Jim did not say white ally, he said you have allies. No matter what, you can have an ally of any shape, form, color, sex, whatever. And if you are a trial for witness and who would assert themselves in meetings, you will make a difference. And yeah, do I have to sit there and make you feel guilt? Well, aren't you a white ally? Don't you care about me? I'm a Black person. Then I'm asking you to be my savior. No, I've sat here and I broke down my doors myself. No one listened to me. I started my own media. They didn't want to give me my stuff. I started my own events. I was like, you know what? They're too busy trying to save my neighborhood. I created my own leadership program to empower my neighborhood. So I think as people have to sit here and just say, you know what? We want to move forward. So yes, I agree with, going and asking these people to say, hey, step up, do your job, use your money, use your power and your influence to help us. But at the end of the day, I don't want to play on your guilt, but if that's what you need to be motivated, it starts inside you. So if your guilt is what's going to get you to go ahead and lift up 50 Black people for your life, now, like Arthur said, what's the next step? You get them in there, you get them working. Now, you know what? Do you sit there and recognize, aren't you glad I hired you? You're a credit to your race. I'm saying that because that's been told to me.
Yeah.
You're a credit to your race. So now it goes back to you working on yourself. So yes, I think in this form of this conversation, I'm asking you to be a decent human being while you're doing it. The next step after that is if you do use it because you have a little bit of guilt, you got to pay some pittance. You don't want to go ahead and do that stuff. Do what you got to do. Donate to, but know who you're donating to. Is it the .org, the .com, or your local groups? Understand that. But you have to put steps towards it.
Arthur, what you mentioned earlier, I just want to say, appreciate that real quick because that, what Felicia and you guys are describing is what we went through when we were trying to decide, wait, do we post a black box on the YaJagoff page? We're starting to feel guilty, like, oh God, we haven't done anything. And then we say, wait, let's slow this down here because we don't want to be the ones who just suddenly reacted and said, oh, here's 3 Black restaurants to go to, because that seemed so disingenuous to us because we've had Black people on the podcast. We have Black entrepreneurs on the podcast, Black chefs.
We never felt like we had to prove.
Yeah, and we thought, how do we methodically try to do this? Not that this is, again, saving the world, but the fact is we sat here saying, we just don't want to feel like, oh, yeah, we just gave $50 to some place and we feel good. This is why it took us so long to even pull this together. So I appreciate what you said there. Who else wanted to comment?
Time is everything. Go ahead.
You want to go?
I want to hear
Frizz.
Frizzy.
Okay, well, I mean, just
Go ahead, Frizzy.
But also, two things. Because one, what Jim was talking about handling it now and then hoping that our kids. But that's the point, right? Is that we need you to raise kids that won't want to kill mine, right? That's the point. Is that this thing goes. I have people in my family and people I'm friends with that are they feel like they're punching in, right? They punch in when they punch in. Well, I'm not racist, even though I say all lives matter. I'm not racist because I was a teacher in an inner school back in the day. You know what I'm saying? You ain't Samuel L. Jackson. This ain't a movie for the end, right? You have This is a consistent thing. You know what I mean? Like Arthur knows this more than anybody. Unfortunately, the water boy doesn't get a Super Bowl ring. Right? Mm-hmm. I acknowledge what you did. You kept me fresh out here, dog. I was thirsty. You hit me with the thing, but you don't get a ring. You want that ring, you got to get in the game and get dirty. That's the whole point of this thing, is to get in the ring, get dirty, and be okay with that. And when it comes to, like the YaJagoff was saying, because we had a conversation about this with Rachael and John about the black box posting on there and things like that. Yes, I understand where y'all are coming from, but it's not always just about how you guys feel. It's about understanding that you guys have a responsibility because you touch and communicate and reach so many people who don't think like you. So if you, yes, doing that might make you feel like, oh, we don't got to prove ourselves. No, you don't. But you do need to let the people know who are racist, who are fans of you guys, or who are ignorant, to know that you guys do stand for that and the other stuff. So now you do both. You do that thing and you do the other thing, right? So that's what we do. You gotta be Mike Vick out here. You the quarterback and you running for the ball and you catch it. I missed the football if y'all can't tell, but you know what I mean? Like,
and it wasn't for us. It wasn't about a matter of proving ourselves. It was about being genuine. No, we wanted to make sure whatever movement we made was genuine, because we are friends with everybody on this panel here, and we did not want to look disingenuous to anybody that's on this panel.
But I could not better echo. And Felicia, you taught us that we are not supposed to insert our opinions, so I will do my best to keep it at a minimum. But
wait. Make sure they know why.
No,
as a host. As a moderator.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Felicia. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
When you're hosting, it is a role that you're supposed to host it. But to Arthur's point, I think that we have to all explain that timing is everything. And sometimes we all need time to absorb and truly understand what we want to put out there. It's not a matter of being quick to react, because, again, I looked at this sickened and what can I do? But I didn't want to be like everybody else. I didn't want to be sheep. I didn't. That's the word I'm going to use. I did not want to be a sheep and just say, I'm going to put the black box up. I'm going to say on Facebook, hey, Frzy, I'm your friend too. Tell me what I can do. I'm not going to do it. I would rather figure out what is the best thing for me to do that sends the message or creates the conversation or maybe makes a change.
But now, sat with your discomfort. That's what you got. We talked about that earlier, right?
Yeah, go ahead, Sarah.
You sat with your discomfort.
Correct.
Right? You got to feel it. I think that's the whole thing. Oh, I'm an ally. I'm going to tweet you for... One of my friends called me, I don't know, a month and a half ago and was like, girl, I just got a $50 gift card to Saffron's, which is like the little grocery store here in Swickley in the neighborhood. Yeah. And I was like, why? And it came with a little note that basically said, like, I'm alleviating my white guilt. Here's $50, black neighbor, to the local grocery store, right? That's not being an ally. That's not it.
I think people need to know what they can do, and I think that's the thing right now. People need to know what they can do, because I find people who now they're admitting, go back to Arthur with the steps, like they're admitting that they have some type of bias within them. So what do we do next? What's our next step? Okay, well, I can go ahead, like they said, well, I could put a black box on Facebook to say that. I could, I had a friend of mine who met with me, and she had all these little boxes on her paper, all these words that she wanted to go through. And just an observation, it's most of the baby boomers is what I'm dealing with right now. It's the baby boomers. And somebody said earlier about, it was hard to be colorblind back then. I said, no, that's exactly what they wanted you to be back then. They wanted you to be colorblind. They wanted to say, hey, affirmative action, all these things, you're not supposed to color, hire them, you got to force them in. So now we're at that point that we have to, these young people are saying, no, see me, you have to see me. And the younger ones are work around me, but it's what I think everybody has to do is work within themselves. I mean, once you start, going, working in yourself, then you can go ahead and fix your own biases, okay, I see this, find a trusted person. And if they are black, tell them, be upfront. I hate when someone calls me and says, I want you to know I'm a white ally. And I'm putting a list of black businesses together and I want to make sure you're on my list. And I'm sitting there like, if you're saying this to me, your friends who are going to get this list is probably going to egg my house or destroy my business. No, I have no desire to be on your list. But put me on a list of businesses that you respect, I'm in.
All right. So let's move things along. We have a final question where you're all going to comment on, but we have two questions that Sorg has texted us from the comments. And the first one is Lisa Cunningham from the City Paper. She wants to know, for the Black panelists, what question are you most tired of white people asking you during these type of panel discussions? And please, Lisa, if we've asked them tonight, remember, you guys wrote the questions. So that way,
Frizzy will call us out if we did. Just saying.
So if anybody want to, obviously the Black panelists, yeah.
Olga, you've been quiet. You want to go?
Oh,
my goodness. Which question? What should I call
sick
you?
Of?
Are you? Oh,
No,
okay.
The question I'm sick of. What should I call you?
Okay.
Olga.
Perfect.
Because in our preparation for this, you had mentioned white people get the opportunity to be Polish, Italian, Norwegian, whatever, but Black is Black.
You want. Well, not only that, it's the idea of who is naming me. As a Black person, I couldn't really name myself. When we were brought here, we were called the N-word. Then we were Negroes. Then we were Blacks. Then the vote came about to be African American. So what are we? And the term of who we are is always, a white person making that decision. So when you say what can I call you? I tell you Olga. That's my name. That's who I am. If you want to break it down some more, I'm going to say, okay, a West Indian, because that's my roots right there. That's acknowledgement of my family as far as we can trace it. But I'm tired of you saying, what can I call you? Why do you need to label me? You don't look at the label. When you say who you are, you say, I am, I'm Jim. I'm Irish American. Or I'm Tony. I am, I'm an Italian American. You get the opportunity to identify who you are, but yet you want to label me. You need to put me in a box so you can feel comfortable, and I'm tired of it.
As Arthur said earlier, he doesn't say, "Hey, these are my white friends. These are my right."
These are my friends.
So why would we do the opposite? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. You're so quick to say, "Hey, these are my Black friends," so we know that you're good.
Yeah. Frizzy, did you want to answer that question, or Felicia?
Yeah, man.
Do you want to...
Yeah, for me, and just to go off of OG real quick, I feel you, because it's not like when a white person like shoots up a church or something, we're not like, well, I don't think that's right because I have white friends, right? Like we don't do that either. No. But this is the one I get. This is the one I'm tired of so much. Like, I drink Gatorade when I get this question. That's how tired I am of this question.
Oh.
They ask me, hey, you know I'm not racist, right? Like, I mean, I ain't post nothing about it. I'm not like going to go to a protest. I'm not acknowledging it at all. But like, me, I'm not racist, right? It makes me want to like Spartan kick somebody. Like,
okay.
but that's the one I
get you.
I've been getting out a lot because a lot of people, they want the okay from us, right? To be like, it's okay. I know, you get a pass because you're my friend, but it hurts even more because you're my friend.
Right.
Arthur, Felicia, do you want to answer it all, or are you good?
Yeah, for me, the thing that I always get tired of is when people just ask you to have to explain what it's like to be Black. Ooh. As if first of all, it's plenty of information out there in terms of what we've been oppressed with, some of the obviously the violence, the social injustice that we are directly impacted by, but it's like we have to justify our feelings. I have to go and tell you ad nauseum and in depth the different things that I've personally witnessed in order for you to really feel like this is a justifiable move and this is something that should garner or require your attention. Now, for me, that drives me nuts. Because I mean, you don't, for anything else that we're talking about, when we're talking about LGBT and we want to give them their space and support them, we don't have to ask them what it's like to deal with that. We understand the oppression that they deal with. We understand the negativity that they receive just for who they are. Why is it that when it comes to African Americans or minorities in particular, it's always I have to describe what that is like, and I have to go in such detail, but at the same time I can't go into too much detail because that's going to scare you away. And if it's too deep, then it's no way it can be that bad. For me, that drives me nuts.
Listen, so far nobody's
Nothing drives him nuts.
so far nobody's hit on any questions we've asked. So let's so we don't do Felicia.
Well, just to touch on what Arthur said, I used to get that a lot. And I started thinking about like an experiment that everybody can understand whether you're for or against. So I would just say, like, go out and put on a red hat. Don't say anything and go into a community that you don't know. Just go there or just walk around a store that you haven't been in and just put on a red hat. And you will see what kind of reactions you're going to get. You're either going to get somebody who's going to be like, sup, they're going to recognize you, be like, we on the same page. Or you're going to get complete disgust, or someone's going to grab themselves or do something just because you had that red hat on, So that red hat right there, I think, shows just a little bit of the Black experience that I've had, because, but the thing is with that, you can take off the hat and you can just be back to your normal self. But on me, like that, I've had over 40 years of just like being Black and dealing with the looks. Of either you're on my side or you're not on my side. You're with me. You understand we all have the same set of values. We all believe this. We all like this music. We all do this, or we don't. So the red hat is the easiest way to shut that question down, because people can feel it immediately. They can understand it, whether they're for it or against it.
That's a great point.
Yeah, I like to ask. I like to ask racist people most of the time when they say something racist to me. I like to ask them to name the part of the genome in our DNA that makes our skin Black. And if they can't answer it, then I just don't even engage in the conversation. You know what I mean? Like it's 2%. But I'll let them Google that. Go ahead, Rachel. My bad.
All right. The other question. The other question for all of the panelists, and we'll just go in a row. How has today's challenges shaped your future outlook on your personal future? So basically, this is from Jeff Cobbs, basically asking, how has the challenge that we've dealt with in 2020 shaped your future outlook? And
I think we almost answered that earlier, huh? Frzy, you want to start? Let's go everybody.
I want to go last on this one.
Okay.
I'll start off.
Go ahead, Arthur. First of all, let's just say prayers for Arthur, because my man, we've all been very comfortable, and Arthur has been sitting in a car the entire time.
Listen to me. I was going to text you and say, is your air conditioning on? I swear to you.
Listen.
That is a dedicated individual right there. So go ahead, Arthur.
Arthur, I got you. If you get a ticket, dog, I got you.
Hey, it's all good. Look. I done have my little water bottle over here. Got my sweat rag.
I know. Sweat rag. I was like, oh, that brother's hot. He's grabbing it up, drinking, hydrating yourself.
Someone's handing him bottles of water through the other window. Yeah. All right, sorry. Go ahead.
But in terms of how this social panel is ultimately going to impact me going forward, for me, it definitely has given me a new sense of belief that change can come. It does give me a new sense of belief that people are willing to get into the fight, not because it's convenient, but because they genuinely want to. When you look at some of the people on this call, guys like Andrew, guys like Jim up here, that means a lot. Seeing that, because they didn't have to hop up here with us. But even seeing Frzy and everybody else is up here, like, it lets me know that collectively, even though we're all from different backgrounds, all at different stages in our lives, we understand the importance of this. And going forward, it lets me know that, hey, when we talk about effectively ending racism, effectively ending social injustice, for me, I always look at it like, if we're a team, how can we accomplish this? Everybody isn't the quarterback. Everybody isn't the running back. Everybody isn't the wide receiver. We all specialize in certain things. Some of us, we use our platform. We're going to be outspoken. We're going to make sure we're hitting you over the head. Others, okay, we're more skilled in terms of being more covert, making sure the policies behind the scenes are getting done. Some of us have the access that a lot of others don't have, but they're already in those rooms and they can make moves that way. So when I look at it, I say to myself now that, man, seeing all these different people, all these different stages, it lets me know that we're all in the same team. We're all going to fight to accomplish this goal, and we're all going to do it about different ways. But in the end, the result is going to be what we truly want, and that's going to be all of us having equal rights and all of us being treated fairly and justly.
Perfect.
Yeah, thank you. Olga, do you want to go?
Well, how this panel has affected me, or maybe moving forward, is the idea that socially maybe we can continue to reach more people. That my cynical optimism continues to grow. That I don't know. It is so hard to be in the business that I'm in, seeing the people come forward, and it's like, is this the true heart that we're seeing? It's not just the panel; it's the people who, like that person who wrote in that question about the impact that's going to have. So for me, it's, are we really reaching the soul of the individuals? Because lip service is what has gotten us here. Lip service through the civil rights movement, lip service through all the different fights that has happened, the bombings of different neighborhoods. Is these kind of talks going to truly move the heart and soul of an individual? Because even though, as Jim said, we need to make legislations and rules and changes in corporate, in business, in law, but you cannot lawfully put a bill in to make someone do the right thing. We can't change by law and say value Frzy, value Felicia, value Sarah, value Olga as human beings through that. Corporations can have all the diversity leaders that they want to have, but until that really that heart and soul is touched, even if it's through guilt, as Jim says, I don't know. I don't know what kind of impact we're really going to make. I just have to be so cynically optimistic and wait and see.
Jim Rooney.
Well, I feel like I have to address this guilt thing. That was a side point of what I was trying to make. So I hope that that's clear. In terms of this experience, and then as I said, sort of the moment we're in, I personally, I have really tried to reach out, in many ways more directly than I ever have. I have spent many times in my life trying to gather information, but I've been more specific and gathering certain information about, how I, as a white man in power, and frankly, and I've talked about this, I also have wealth, which is a different layer on top of that. How do I take greater responsibility? And I think there are things we've said. I think it is not just being an ally. I know we don't love that word, but it's really being anti-racist and being, as Andrew said, uncomfortable. And uncomfortable in small and nuanced situations. It's sort of easy, as Jim Rooney to get on something like this and have a big conversation. But when a neighbor, has one of those attitudes, says something that's obnoxious, how am I going to have the guts? Am I going to have the courage to step up and say, that's not appropriate. That's not where I want to see the world going, and take action in a very specific situation. So, I hope I have that kind of character, and I believe I've tried to do it, but that's the responsibility I believe that I have.
Sarah?
Gosh, these were all such good answers, everyone. I thank John and Rachael for including me on this. When I read everybody's title, I thought, golly gee, why am I in this room? But I'm really happy to have made these connections and to be on all the same page and all the same team, and I'm sure we'll all share information and reach out when we can help each other and be true, authentic allies, right? All working for the same cause. And I think this is one little microcosm that is allowing, how many of us are there? 8, 10 of us, to go out and make a difference. And maybe it's little, but we have to start somewhere. So, yeah.
Thank you, Felicia.
I am fine with the word ally. You can say ally all day long. However, when you put the word white in front of it, that's when it becomes a problem. That's when the phrase becomes an issue with me. An ally is not bad. I love the way that Sarah, right? Sarah said it, right? But being on a panel, I don't know if the panel is changing who I am or what I'm going to be doing next. But what I'm loving about this is there's so many panels happening now. There's so many discussions, and I believe Arthur was saying it best, was like there's so many different layers with all of us here. And on my end, I'm hyper local, so I'm truly like trying to change one community as much as I can. So I'm in the educating portion of it. Like, this is what it means to be on a committee. I mean, if we start at that committee level, you know, everything else will trickle up, hopefully, because those committees are our leaders. So I need to get people to understand you have to volunteer. And I have a town of 7,000. And if only, you know, if the same 5 people sit on, you know, 10 boards, we have an issue, because they're bringing their implicit bias in every one of those meetings. You know, so it's one of those things, like I like the Rooney Rule. You know, how do you get that in the hiring process? I don't like the things they're doing now so much. But that's a whole different conversation. But I'm not at that level. So if you have some say in that, just, you know, listen to Tony Dungy. I like what he's saying. But I really believe that, you know, it's more just helping people understand when you're raising your hand, you're being a witness and you're stepping out and helping on those committees. And I really believe the committees who are the ones who are bringing it to boards to vote on for policy, and understanding how policy is written, understanding how decisions are made, whether it's, you know, doing a tournament, you know, a basketball tournament in your town. I think everybody needs to know how that process happens. So civically engaging people by even having panel discussions will help take all of us to that next level. And I'm not a big race person. I don't want to sit there and focus on that, because, you know, I focused on that focusing on being Black has not helped me move forward. Focusing on being the best is what launched me to where I'm at right now. So, like, if I sit here and focus on being Black, depending on who's in front of me, you know, the person who's in front of me is the one who's trying to keep me in that lower position, you know. So I don't want to, I'm taking up too much time, and I can keep going. So by all means, but the whole thing is, if you go out of this, check yourself, make yourself a little checklist. Am I a savior or empowerment? And if you are Black, make sure you're healing and understanding what you're bringing from our past. Don't bring it into our future, because we need to make sure that we're healing and not bringing that past trauma to the next generations. All right, so we can grow and just, you know, start walking equally with everybody else.
Andrew.
So I hear Olga's skepticism, and I wish I could say, yeah, all white people are going to do a better job. We got this thing. This is the moment. And all the moments before, yeah, we talked about it. This is the one we're going to make a difference on. But I know for myself that I can control myself and I can make a difference. And I know for me personally, it was a moment in the fall when the Columbia Journalism report came out that I referenced earlier, that said what a terrible job Pittsburgh has done at having diverse newsrooms and having diverse coverage. And I turned to Brian Cook, who's the president of the Pittsburgh Black Media Federation, and I said, Brian, you know, what can I do? And he challenged me. He said, you know, it's one thing if we go out and talk about these reports as the Black Media Federation, but it's another thing if you, as a white person in a place of power in Pittsburgh media, you start to talk about it. And so I started to talk about it. And for me, it's about being present, being at the table, being part of these conversations. And I think the other challenges for us is something that Jim mentioned, is that when white people are alone, when we're in a room with just white people, how do we behave then? And how do we talk about issues of race? And are we willing to, you know, be as honest then and to call out our, you know, our friends and our family when they say things that are really inappropriate or they do things that are inappropriate. So I can't promise you, Olga, that we're all going to do better as white people, but I can tell you I'm going to try to do better myself. So
I'm going to hold you to that.
I know you will.
We know you will. Frizzy.
I'll you know, everybody's gone, and I'll make mine really short. I'm gonna preface this with I think I'm the youngest on the panel. I think you guys all look really good, so I'm not sure. But I think I'm the youngest on the panel. But with that being said, I say that to say that I was raised to respect my elders, and what this has done is really, I respect all of you guys, but I really respect all of you guys a lot. And I see people older than me, and as those that have experienced more than me from the black side and the white side, as someone that can be role models. And each and every single one of you guys are role models to me, and I really, really appreciate having the opportunity, especially at my age, to be here and to sit with you guys and to learn from you guys, from your experiences, right? And then most of you guys are in the media, so knowing that I can trust that the message that you guys will give out will be positive and productive and move forward, right? Sarah, you sit on two high places on these boards. You are the boss, right? And decide what these people see, how these people grow, and how these places and organizations bring everyone together as a city. And knowing that you're sitting on there makes me excited. Arthur, I look up to you as a strong black man, and being the only other black man on this panel that I can look up to see that not only that you didn't just shut up and dribble, right? That you decided to do more and echo the things that you do and continue to show us that we can be what we dream of being. And especially when it comes to Rachael and John, thank you guys for not only being white allies, which you were saying that, but just being good people. And all of you guys I trust with my eyes closed. It doesn't matter what you guys look like. And I'm very appreciative of the opportunity to know that, and I'm okay with saying that, I promise you guys that I will continue to pave the road with the cement that you guys give me. So I love you guys. I'm very, very grateful. Thank you so much.
Oh, well, thanks.
So when I'm done crying.
Yeah, no, and I think we have to acknowledge there's fear and questions on both sides. If we say both, meaning black, white, or just in rate, there's fear and the need to listen on both sides at this point. And this is what we were hoping to accomplish here: is show people, everybody, that people can sit and have a conversation. Sure, we can't get together at this point. We certainly tried to do that tonight, but people can have a conversation and listen and respond and even disagree. And I don't have to get on my Facebook page and tell you suck when I disagree with you, right? And and I don't have to, whatever. But we can have these conversations. We certainly have had families enough with conversations of having, whatever the issues are. But it's a matter of listening, and I hope that we've educated everybody about that tonight.
And so for me, I think that I just posed, the last question was sort of posed already from Lisa. So we can end at this point. But to me, I think it's very important because I have to win you over, Olga, because I know we're friends. But let me tell you what I'm going to do. I need us to continue this conversation because I don't want it to stop at one panel discussion. And I want this conversation to continue. And when I say win you over, it's not because I know in my heart I'm your friend. But when I say win you over, I want that cynicism. I want you to not be a cynic in the sense that you can truly say it's not just John and Rachael. It's John and Rachael and who they have influenced to get on to get into the right movement to go to the next level. And how do we do that? And it's not just words. It's how do we take this and make it an action and make this not just a panel discussion that was, hey, that was one of the better ones, right? Because I'm competitive. We know this is one of the better ones. But I want it to be something that I live, that I teach, that I can continue to say to people who follow us on a regular basis. I appreciate that. And what's next? So I look to you guys, and I promise you that the conversation continues. We need to find out what's next.
And I'm looking to make sure we erase the word they from everybody's language, right? If someone's black saying they, including me, and that I'm a racist, or if there's a white person that's saying they, meaning the black people, right? I want to make sure that we erase the word they and put some definitions to those things so that we all, again, it's a listening technique. But thank you guys, everybody.
I'm
sorry, Olga.
One thing before we wrap everything up. One thing we didn't touch upon is I do not want Black Lives Matter or the conversation about race to become some kind of financial gain or some ad campaign.
Right.
Yes, good point.
Right now, I'm sick and tired of Black Lives Matter. Come and buy my hoagie. Black Lives Matter. It's a sale for these clothes. Black Lives Matter. This is, you know, come and spend with us because we believe Black Lives Matter, but really you don't. You're just looking at the dollars. So that's part of my cynical optimism that, you're looking to make change, but it's based on your financial gain and not the real change that we really need in this community. So that's my only thing regarding.
Well, it goes back to the genuineness we talked about earlier,
Trend
right?
Versus, well, actually, and I love, this is how, John, when we first, and to be completely transparent, the first person who we took this to was Arthur, because, you know, he actually comes on the podcast, obviously once a month. And we've built a relationship over the last 3 years that is the most genuine. I could, you know, I've texted him twice saying, you're the best person I know. He, you know, we messaged him and said, you know, this is what we want to do. This is what we want to convey. And one of the things that we said, other than we want the conversation to continue, was we don't want this to be a sprint, right? We want it to be a marathon. And you know, Frzy, you're the best at those cliches. You are. You make them less hokey, right? But I love that point that John is actually the one who said it. He's like, we don't want to be those people who say, hey, this is what's happening right now. We want this to be every day. You know, this is the way we live our lives. So help us figure out, how does that work and what does it look like?
Yeah, and we talked about how it became a conversation between us when I posted on my Facebook page, what do I do? I'm white. What do I do? And this is
Frzy,
right. And this is it. This is it. So thank you. And the other thank you really to Andrew Conte, because we did go to him and say, like, right? What do you think about this? And he's like, look, you guys can handle this. And we're like, I don't know. But he was very, very supportive. So thank you to Frzy. Yes. Thank you to Andrew Conte. Thank you to Felicia. Thank you to Sarah. Thank you to Jim Rooney and Olga George and Arthur Moats. And a big, big, big shout out to Sorgatron Media and Mike Sorg. He
never says no.
He never says no, right? Right. So, and I do think the Hero Award has to go to Arthur for sitting in the damn car.
I don't think he's sweating. Look at him.
He was wiping early. I was
going after Arthur for a jitney. Like, yo, you jitneying?
Next time it's car karaoke with Arthur. Next time.
Listen, in all seriousness, we want feedback. Where do we go next? I am not going to stop hounding you guys. This conversation continues somehow. Let's figure out what the next steps are. But thank you from the bottom of my heart, from a person first, but from a mother and from just, you know, a woman. This has more impact on me than you know. So thank you all.
And again, the formal thank yous to the Pittsburgh Black Media Federation, the Point Park University Center for Media Innovation, Ambridge Connection, the Pittsburgh Media Partnership, which you'll be hearing much more from as we're trying to figure out whether we are a pandemic or racial issues at this rate. Well, And again, thanks to Sorgatron Media and everybody who listened and everybody who will watch this later. We really appreciate it. And
thank you.
God, we're way over our time. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks for your time, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.